Evening. It being 7:02 on October 17th, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So, second.
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have any walk-ins this evening?
Name is David Doherty, 122 Gilson Road. A lot of you, we were talking about the wind turbine and you wanted to hear what it sounded like. Well, I was going through an old iPhone recording I took, and the quality of it's not that great because it was done with this phone on July 29th, 2015 at 12:30 at night. Now, bear in mind, the quality's not that great because it came off an iPhone. I'm asking you, got to really close your eyes and imagine that this sound is coming at you, zoom, zoom, and you can feel it, but you can't feel it with a little 1-inch speaker here. Like if you can imagine in the dark and there's an impulse behind it, so.
Mr. Doherty, before you play it, how long is it?
I'll only make it about 20 seconds.
Okay, I just wanted to double check.
And if you look at the first page, those spikes are each of the spikes of that turbine when the blade passes in front. So you felt that. Then the sound of the airplane that never goes away when the turbine is not facing you and all you can hear is the whine of the turbine.
Mr. Doherty, where did you take that from? Your bedroom or your?
That was taken from inside my house, from the bedroom, but the window was open about 6 inches.
But in front of the window?
Yes. And this is the
Bluetooth device.
oh,
The radio model. Aux input. Music play. The Bluetooth.
everything.
The radio model. Aux input model. Music play mode. The Bluetooth device is
I
ready
must have
to
lost
pair.
it. I must have lost
Well, I
it.
think we heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the impulse, and it's difficult to imagine unless you're in the dark and you can actually feel what they call it, that infrasound pulse that comes with it when it passes there. The other thing I wanted to show you was, Mr. Barron gave me the information relative to the SCADA data, and on page 3, what I've done is I've taken all of the 2 years of data, and I gave you one page, on page 5 of it, there were 4 pages, all of the 2 years of data he gave me, and I collated it as far as the direction that the wind was blowing or recorded at the turbine, what the turbine recorded. And you can see that there's only one direction that there weren't any complaints. There was one complaint at north-northeast, 2, and it goes around the clock, and you have 45 of them at west-northwest and 14 at northwest. You can see preponderance of them are from that side. Mm-hmm. Page 4 shows you on a scale, a map, a pictorial, where the wind is blowing, and you can see all the red marks are the homes that complaints have come from, and that's the predominant wind. But you also have complaints to the east when the wind is blowing to the west, rather, when the wind was blowing from the east down at James Landing. The only place that you don't get complaints is from the north. So if you want to eliminate all the complaints, you effectively have to shut it down in an omnidirectional fashion. If you go back to page 3, on the upper right side, it shows the wind at the nacelle, that's up at the turbine itself, and the number of complaints. And you can see that the biggest complaints were when it was registering 17.6 miles per hour. There were 37. And at wind speed 34.6 is the maximum speed at which complaints ever came in. The turbine shuts down at 44.7 miles per hour. So you can see there's still room up in the top there. There's still room at the top, so you're getting about 70 or 60% of production when these complaints come in, going down to 10.5 miles per hour. So if you wanted to eliminate them all, you could say you could shut the turbine down from 34.6 miles per hour at the nacelle down, and you get rid of all the complaints, and it'd take in all the directions. If you do look at the data on 5, I've highlighted one of them that was done on June 21st, 2016. It shows that the reported wind is at 5.8 miles per hour, but yet the nacelle records in meters per second. So you have to multiply that times 2.3 to get the miles per hour. So you can see it's at least twice, maybe 3 times the speed, and that was that business I was telling you about, wind shear, when it's quiet at ground level, but the turbine gets wind, and it produces a sound. When it reaches the homes at the ground level, it's really quiet, and you can hear it.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Right, well, thank you, and you know it's on the agenda later on this
Yes.
evening, so thank you for
Can I ask just one quick
summarizing
question?
this.
Sure.
Yes.
On page 4, where do you live? Are you at where there's 45 complaints?
It should say 122 Gilson Road on the right there, and points to one of the red dots. On page,
On the right side there.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're way over here.
I can give you my copy if I can approach
No?
you.
No, he found it.
No? So the majority of the complaints are opposite you?
Well, no, that shows the
That's just
direction of
wind
the
direction.
wind.
Okay. So the
Downwind
majority
of
of the
them.
complaints are probably
Yeah,
from your area?
You can see that the majority of them start from, it's 180 degrees from the northwest down to the southwest. That's where you get most of them,
Yep, I get it now.
because the wind
And-
is blowing and you're downwind.
And these are total complaints, not individual people. So you could be 30 of those 45.
As a matter of fact, of the 4 sheets that Mr. Barrington gave me from July 18th, 2015 to September 29, 2017, approximately 2 years and 2 months, there were 144 complaints, 122, and I was 42 of them. That's when I said last year, you said, well, we'll shut it down from the southwest and get rid of 65% of the complaints. I said, yeah, that's me, but how about the other people? I may have a bigger problem because of the topography and other issues than other people do. And perhaps I complain more that often, but it's more the people around that have given up. You know, I talk to them all the time, and they say, why complain, nobody does anything. But I'm just a tenacious, relentless individual.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda is...
Your speaker.
Oh, I think you forgot your speaker,
Oh, yes.
Dave.
There isn't music on it.
Al, report from the acting town administrator?
Yes. Thank you. Just a couple of things to report. One is that the Gates Gym is now open fully for play and is being made available to youth groups as well as the senior groups that are playing there. We are renting it in the weekend, on the weekends. During the week, there's no rental charge for it. The floor has been completely refinished, and that preserves the floor. It hadn't been refinished in a number of years. And as a result, it gotten very slippery and dangerous. That's why we had to keep it closed a little bit longer so we could get the floor finished. And Tony, it's in good shape
see it?
now. Looks great. You ought to go see it. It
But
really looks like
I'm aware of.
it's an impressive looking place now. They've done a nice job.
Great.
The football field carpet and the track rebuild project. We're gonna push that off until the Springtown meeting so we can get a better handle on what is the cost of the track rebuild, so we can do the football field and the track at the same time. The track was originally, looked like it would be a less expensive project. Turns out it's gonna be quite a project. So we will not be able to replace those until probably next summer, early fall. Okay.
Okay.
We've signed a contract to design and permit the dog park on Driftway. This was a CPC project. Horsley was chosen for that, and they're getting ready to get going. I don't know the timeline for when that could be up and running, but I'll get back to you on that later. All right. Next week on the 26th at 6 p.m. in the Performing Arts Center, you have a meeting to discuss the one topic of the senior center siting location, evaluating the 5 locations, taking public input, and then discussing what you want to do with that.
And we decided 6 PM?
Yes, that's what I understand.
Okay.
That's what we've scheduled it for,
Okay.
based on what we heard.
6 o'clock, 26.
Excuse me?
The land
Six.
swap, we might talk that later, but I've located 5 potential pieces of land.
Okay.
And we're doing research on those right now. There's a piece in Minot, a piece on Clapp Road, a piece off of Old Oak and Bucket, a piece on Kent Street, and land that may, and someone has come forward with a piece of land that might be viable as well to purchase. So I'll be getting you all of that data. We won't be able to conclude probably before town meeting, but on town meeting warrant is just an opportunity for you to get permission from town meeting to go ahead and purchase land or convert land as you so choose.
So you don't think we'll have it identified by then?
I'll have all the data for you by
Okay.
then, but it'd be your choice if you want to then select one.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah, no, sure,
We'll try to do it at your next meeting,
okay.
November
Perfect.
7th or something.
Any questions for Al?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is when you're talking about gates, you're talking about the old Gates Middle School. So we're talking about the old high school.
Yes.
So in other words, to differentiate from the new Gates Gymnasium.
Oh, the old Gates,
Right.
yeah, sorry,
So
all right.
It's just an issue that we're going to have to
Yeah,
kind
the
of
new
figure out
Gates
how to
gym
call
floor is
it.
in pretty good shape.
Right.
Right.
And the only thing I'd add is when you talked about refurbishing the field over there, because of all the sports that happen in the fall, you probably do it in the winter, so after.
Yeah, late winter, late spring, late fall rather, right, yeah.
All right, terrific. Anyone else have anything for Al?
Nope.
No? Okay. Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
All right, so Chief Murphy is here to recognize some 25-year service awards.
Yes, I have
Welcome.
two tonight. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Tonight we have 2 firefighters that have 25 years of dedicated service to the Scituate Fire Department. I'd like to bring them up, Captain Bill Sestito and firefighter Bob Rosado. Both were hired in 1992. Captain Sestito was hired in October 19th, 1992, and firefighter Rosado, August 22nd, 1992. 25 years of dedicated service. Their leadership and commitment shows every day. Captain Scituate was a member of the Honor Guard. He's in his 20th year as captain now. He was also one of our lead personnel for fire investigations. Bob Rosado is a 25-year veteran, also a longtime member of our dive team, and also a member of our Honor Guard. Again, they both do exemplary work every day. Their leadership and commitment shows on a daily basis. And I'm proud to have them aboard. And 25 years of service, they show me a few things. So I'd just like to recognize them both for their ongoing service, and we have a couple of gifts for you guys. Don't open them Congratulations. Thank you. Appreciate it. They're both on the wall now, the new plaque up here. 25 years of service, and the second and third name of the new plaque, so
Great.
as long as the building stands, you're up there.
Listen, congratulations to you both, and thank you for your dedication and service. You know, really appreciate it. We're honored to have great firefighters like yourselves. Thanks so much.
Guys.
Thanks for coming in, too.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Can we get wrapping?
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Chief.
What's that?
Can we get wrapping paper next time?
Good stuff. Okay, next is a discussion and vote for the Tootsie Roll Drive from the Knights of Columbus. Mark Sullivan? How are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm Mark Sullivan. I'm with the Scituate Knights of Columbus. I've been with them since the year 2000, so this is my 17th year. For the last 13, I have had the privilege of running what we call the Tootsie Roll Drive. This is a program that is now a countrywide program that the Knights of Columbus started almost 50 years ago. Started one little council up in Michigan, went statewide, and it went picked up and went all over the country. So we're just one council among the several thousands council that collect for kids with intellectual disabilities. And we do that every year, rain, snow, sleet or hail. My first year, we had a blinding snowstorm, and I had guys sitting out in the coffee corner huddled under that little tiny awning, still collecting money. And we collect at the dump and many of the other establishments in town. So we always, every year, you may remember Stuart Walker. He was a long time member of our council. He died a few years ago at around 93. For 30 years, he ran this program, and he was very dedicated to kids with intellectual disabilities. and he was my mentor in getting involved in this. Plus, not everybody wants to do it, so I wound up with it too. But it's good. But I run about 40, 50 guys over the course of a couple weekends, and they're always out there for 2 hours helping. The goal is to raise money. Every year we raise between $7,000 and $9,000. I look at it as we are the vehicle for your generosity, for everybody in the surrounding towns that go to the various shops and supermarkets where we collect. If we're not there, their generosity doesn't get that chance to be distributed to kids in need. So every year we ask your permission to, if we can collect at various town locations, especially at the dump. We'll be collecting there not this weekend, but the next weekend. And also, Stuart started this. He asked if the town, in recognition of the things that we do to help the kids with intellectual disability, if you would proclaim it Scituate Nights at Columbus Tootsie Roll Drive, weekend on the weekend, or that would be the last weekend in October. So we would appreciate that. The one other thing, and I presume this is recorded and sent out over the airwaves, people don't come to us to ask for money.
I was going to ask you how you distribute the money and how much of it stays local.
The money is all the statewide money is taken and given to the state. The only administrative costs are the purchase of the Tootsie Rolls. Other than that, everything is volunteer. So we pay for the Tootsie Rolls. After that, 100% of the money goes out. It goes to the state, and then every council can file for a grant. Grants are usually in the amounts of $3,000 to $4,000. There are exceptions where we can go up to $7,000 to help kids in our communities. We service, as the Scituate Knights, Scituate, Cohasset, and Norwell. Those are the 3 towns that we have jurisdiction. But we help in other ones because Marshfield does not have a very strong council at the moment. And so if people in Marshfield need help, we've had people come to us. We try to, I think in the time that I've run it, we probably have collected pretty close to $90,000. I would say we've given back about 1/3 of that. But much of what I'd like people to do is know that we're out here looking for children who have intellectual disabilities, whose families may not be able to meet their needs financially. And please come to us. We have the money. It's taken me a while to learn the intricacies of the bureaucracy to get the money out. But I've done that now, and I work very well with the state to get money back to our communities. And we're looking for people to help. So please, send us your help. I've talked to the people in the schools, but I don't get any requests. So we're a vehicle. We work with other charities, both local and around the southern part of Massachusetts, to pool resources to help kids or families with greater needs. And so please, we have money. I would like to give it out I'd like to take as much as I can. I don't have to get back just what we contribute. I can get 3 times what we generate.
How do they contact you, Mark?
All you have to do is go onto the website for
Okay.
the Knights of Columbus. You'll find my name scattered all over the place there. It's Mark Sullivan, or just talk to the Grand Knight or anybody who's listed there. They all know where I am, and they'll get you in touch with me. And then from there, we can start preparing an application, get the documents together, and try to get some money into the community.
Sounds great. Well, thank you very much for all your volunteer work, and that's a great cause. And I know there are families out there sometimes that are too proud to ask for assistance, but this is, I'm sure, a confidential way
It is all done
to ask for
confidentially.
some assistance, so please take advantage of it.
Yes, I hope they do.
Does anybody have any other comments? I know John has a proclamation to read. To your left, John.
It's just, it takes, like Mark said, it takes a lot of volunteers. Thanks for putting this together and doing it every year. I knew Stu quite well, and thank you.
Oh, thanks. You guys have been wonderfully supportive, the town in so many different departments in so many different ways, so thank you for all you do.
So before I read the proclamation, Mark, two things I was thinking about was if there's a way of maybe connecting with the various PTOs of the various middle school, or middle school would be one, but the elementary schools, to see if, through that means you might be able to, in conjunction with the schools. The other would be through CORS, to see if you've been in touch or they can be in touch with you, because they certainly will be informed of various families, at least not just here, but probably that kind of bleed over into the other communities,
Right.
which would be helpful.
We assist CORS in other capacities too,
Good.
beyond just the money for Tootsie Rolls. We have people who are involved with CORS whose family members are heavily involved with that also.
So that would be great. I can't think of the top of my head of any organization that would be encompassing Scituate itself, obviously the South Shore Arc Association, but my point is to help out with you folks. You guys do a great job. See you out there, wind, rain, you're out there doing it. And you're more than generous at giving more than one Tootsie Roll, I know that.
Well, that's
That's-
it. I have 12,000.
I've had too many myself, but I've always found it to be very generous, so I just want to say thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
I do have a proclamation, I'll
Well,
read
we have to
it.
vote first.
Oh.
So I know Tony may have a comment before we vote, or do you want to make a
No, I
motion?
think the Knights are great. They donate to so many different causes in the town, and, you know, we can't even rattle them all. There's not enough time to rattle them all off, so I thank you for all you do.
No, thank you very much.
So do I have a motion?
So, yeah, we do. I vote to approve the Knights of Columbus Annual Tootsie Roll Drive from October 27th to October 29th, 2017, Friday through Sunday at various locations in the town of Scituate, including various businesses and the transfer station.
Second?
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And now, Mr. Danahy?
All right, so I do have a proclamation, Mark, for you and the various nights. Proclamation reads as follows: whereas the Board of Selectmen would like to recognize a very worthy fund-raising event sponsored by the local Scituate Council of Knights of Columbus, and whereas this campaign will be conducted from Friday, October 27th to Sunday, October 29th, 2017, via their well-known Tootsie Roll Drive, which will benefit the physically challenged and learning disabled in the various communities throughout our Commonwealth. And now therefore be it resolved that the entire town of Scituate and its Board of Selectmen thank the Knights of Columbus for their continued dedication to charitable organizations, and hereby proclaim October 27th through October 29th, 2017, as the, quote, Knights of Columbus Day for the physically challenged and learning disabled, unquote, and urge all the citizens of Scituate to participate in this important effort. Signed this day by the Board of Selectmen, each member.
Thank you
Say
very
thank
much.
you. And also give you a
Thanks,
good-
Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
You have a great night. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, next is a discussion and vote. Mary Ellen Weeks with regards to a change of name for PJ's. Hi, Mary Ellen. You're in representing Kara Tondorf?
Representing Kara, yes.
Okay. So I understand you're just here for a name change, so if you want to just tell us a little
So-
bit about your new name, I think people will be excited to hear that.
Yes. So we are planning to change the name of the very well-known and loved PJ's Country House to Hook and Harvest. We're focusing on bringing things from farm to table, some fine steaks and sides, and eventually focusing on some more seafood and things like that. So we've been doing a lot of work to the restaurant. I don't know if you've had a chance to get in there, but it looks absolutely stunning
Great.
inside.
Yeah, it's great.
So we're making progress, but we'd like to have your vote to change the name to Hook and Harvest.
Okay. And we have to record the name change for your alcoholic license. So, does anybody have any questions for Mary Ellen?
Good luck.
All right. And we just need a motion?
Will the Board of Selectmen approve the DBA from PJ's Country House to Hook and Harvest?
Second?
Second by Mr. Dennehy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Good
coming,
luck.
Mary Ellen. Good luck.
Thank you.
It is looking great. So next is Susanna Adams from the Scituate Education Foundation. Is Susanna here? Hi, Susanna. And I just want to caution the board, they have some some secret locations with this event that she's going to talk about, so don't ask her where they are.
Right.
You have the information, and not let the cat out of the bag for
Thank
her.
you, I appreciate it. So my name is, he's the one we have to be careful about.
I might know of one or two.
So, Susanna, go ahead.
Susanna Adams. I'm a board member on the Scituate Education Foundation. So I'm basically just here to let you know about, this is our first major fundraising event of this season. It's a seaside kitchen tour. So it will be 5 Scituate homes. There will be little tastings from different area chefs, little pop-up boutiques, and little demos from local artisans. And people will, it's a self-guided tour, so they'll drive around from home to home. If you have ever been on the house tour, same kind of idea, yeah. And we're working with getting food permits so that everything is permitted through the health department here. Police detail for some of the homes, not all of the homes, just the ones that are on the busier roads.
To remain.
Right, to remain, right, secret. And that's about, those are the major details. We're going to use the Harbor Community Building is where they're going to pick up tickets and programs beforehand. And that's it. This is, we have a couple major fundraising events that raise the money that we, give out in our grants throughout the year. So will be our first one of the season.
Can you share with the board? I was really impressed with the amount of grants you gave out in your first year.
Yeah.
Do you have that number to share with everybody?
I actually do. I brought it with me.
Great.
So last year was our first year that we gave out grants. We had 47 grant proposals that we had a request for $180,000 in grants, and we granted $51,400. All different types of grants: science, math, technology, arts, language, even some yoga, council on aging.
I was going to say you had some council on aging in there too, which I think is really nice.
Yep.
Aspect of your mission.
Yeah, we go all the way from preschool to, elderly, so we do all ages. But yeah, we were really excited. Our goal last year was to raise $60,000, and we hit that goal. Our goal this year is to raise not quite twice as much, but more than 60,000. So this is our, I never like to say the exact number, but this is our first event, and then we'll move on to another spring event. So yeah, it's been a very exciting year for us.
Any questions for Susanna?
Have you ever done something like this before? Never heard of it.
Well, there was the house tour. I wasn't personally involved in that, but this is kind of, we are working with people who were involved in that, who are kind of helping us along. So this is kind of the same idea. We're just changing it up a bit. Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many you're expecting?
We've sold 100 tickets so far. Our goal is to sell somewhere between 300 to 500 tickets. The house tour sold around 500 tickets, so we're kind of going off of that number. And of course, those would be people carpooling. It wouldn't be that we would have 500 cars going around Scituate. It would be a smaller.
And there's parking at all of these secret locations?
So the parking differs per location, but we are definitely working to make sure that yes, there will be parking, that people will be accommodated. And of course, people will be moving from house to house, not at the same. They won't be going to the first location, second location, third location. They'll be moving different times, different houses, so.
That's a great idea. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the Seaside Kitchen Tours on November 12th, 2017, from 12 to 4 p.m. at 5 Scituate homes, and the program, wristband pickup, and ticket sales at the Scituate Harbor Community Building located at 44 Jericho Road from 9:30 a.m. until 1:30 p.m.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Good
good
luck.
luck.
Thank you.
Exciting. House tours are very successful. Maura Glancy, a discussion and vote on the North Scituate Playground. Hi, Maura.
Hi, Maura.
How are you tonight?
Gentlemen.
Hey.
Okay, the playground, again. I don't know how many times we've been up here, but it's great. It's just
there.
about there. The opening's on the 22nd. I missed, if Al had already told you that. I have two ladies here. I'll have them introduce themselves. They are from the Friends of Scituate Recreation. They are asking for you to accept their donation that they have raised. There's been a couple of memorial contributions and then straight contributions. The merchants in North Situate raised a lot of money, and since I gave you the figure, which was $22,198.92, somebody had made another donation of $600.
Oh, nice.
So that is incorrect what you have, so the total should be $22,793.92.
Okay.
And I'm gonna turn this over and have them introduce themselves and identify where they live and whatnot, so. Go ahead, Janine.
Janine Chisholm, live on Sedgwick Drive, and have been involved in the playground fundraising.
Nice to meet you.
And design, too.
And design.
Don't be humble.
And this is Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin Muro. I live on Turner Road, and I've also been involved with the playground fundraising committee and the design team, and I'm also a business owner in North Situate.
Excellent.
Okay.
And you're both on the Recreation Commission as well? Or
Friends
no,
of Situate.
Friends of Situate Recreation. Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Well, thank you for all your hard work. It's been a community effort to build that beautiful playground that we're going to be celebrating on 10/22, right?
Yes.
Sunday?
Yes, 1 o'clock.
Great. Can't do it without donations, so thank you. Anybody have anything else?
The playground looks great.
Yeah.
Looked at it the other day. I don't know if the fence is down yet, but it looked great from a
They
distance.
designed it.
Yeah. If you can just tell the public what you're going to use the money for. I know it says it on our thing here, but 22,000 is a lot of.
It is. We are still looking to purchase benches, tables. We need, and the install of all of that, as well as plaques for some of the donations, and soccer nets. And some other equipment.
Okay. That'll go right on the site, on the grass area of the site, I guess, the soccer net?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Awesome. All right. Do you want to have a motion to accept the value?
Move the Board of Selectmen accept the donation to the town of Scituate to be used for various equipment needed for the new North Scituate playground.
Second.
Do you want to say for the amount?
Do I need the amount?
Yeah.
No, because the amount is
I didn't
not
think so.
going to the town, it's being paid directly to
Okay.
purchases.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Danny. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Before they leave, I just...
Well, they have one more thing, too.
Oh, all right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm
Let's go
sorry.
ahead.
Well,
No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say, I have an idea. My sister was involved in the one out back, and I'm sure it just gets harder the more things you have to do for, all the different codes and things. So, thank you. I was talking
You
to...
wouldn't have any idea how much.
No, I'm sure I wouldn't.
I was involved with that over there with your sister also, and
Sorry, I just...
Ricky Judge and all, and that
So it's gotten a
was
lot
easy.
So it's gotten a lot, the bar is raised,
Yeah.
correct? Right.
Well, and also the playground is different too. It's a very contemporary playground, and I think the
Right.
children in town are going to enjoy it.
Sure they will.
The children in town are like this on the gate.
Yeah.
Oh, they keep riding in when we're there. When I'm over there,
Adults, too.
they ride by
Yeah,
with their
mention that.
parents.
This morning.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the second order of business is to name it. So do you want to share a little bit about how you arrived at the name? I know where it comes from, but go ahead.
Sure. Well, the other playground that was up here was on the high school campus. Now it's the high school and junior high, middle school campus. And it had to be moved because they were going to put a parking lot, building, whatever there. So it started out maybe about 8 years ago when they first sharpened the pencil to start moving it. It looked like it might go behind Town Hall. It had various spots, and then the one in North Scituate came up, and it looked like it would be a win-win for everybody to put it in North Scituate. It would be nice for the community, it would be nice, a location, and it would be off a campus so people could use it, off a school campus so people could use it during the day. The playgrounds that are on school campuses can't be used during the day, obviously, because the other children at school are using it, but the little toddlers can't go on them. So it seemed like a nice idea, and the overall consensus of the group wants to keep the same name and transfer it over. But that's totally up to you people. I mean, I've been calling it the North Scituate Playground because I didn't want to be biased and say, I don't want to call it that. So,
But the old one was called Seaside Fun?
Seaside Fun.
Okay.
What was the significance of the old name of Seaside Fun?
Sean? I don't
Anybody
know.
know?
I can't remember.
I have to ask one
I
of you
actually
guys.
was on that committee 100 years ago, and it was a committee decision that it reflected the fun of living in a seaside community.
All right, so other than, it wasn't, okay. I asked that because I looked at this, and I have no problems calling it. It's just that looking at the building that stands next to it and finding out that, how that was preserved, and former select woman who used to be very involved for a number of things, I initially thought maybe it might be nice to be calling it Sue Phippen, recreational area or a playground, because she's done so much. But I just thought I'd share that with you folks as consideration, not to usurp what the committee members think, but she did so much for the community, for kids, for Christmas, community Christmas, and other things. So I just throw that out there as a thought. But again, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody. That's what came to my mind.
Did your committee consider different names, or
I don't think I heard any other name, to be honest with you.
It's fairly quick that we came to that.
I think we were so focused on all of the other details.
Right.
We really
There have been a couple of large donations made by community members that have passed away, and in memory of over, a lot of the 22,000.
And those are going to be.
So you have plaques.
They'll have a
Thanks.
plaque on one of the, a couple of apparatuses, and maybe the benches and the tables that are going to be put in there, but.
Tony?
Yeah, I thought the same thing as John, not for Sue Phippen. I think it's a phenomenal idea, but I think it's a great opportunity to name something that's real special in town. And maybe it has a combination of, of kind of the fun name as well as some sort of naming situation. And you couldn't have thought of a better person, John. She did so much for kids, and the town in general served the town for decades. But I just start thinking about it.
Would we have to check with her estate for permission?
I don't know, John just mentioned it.
I don't think so. If you're going to name something up to someone, I don't think so. But I would at least say, what I would suggest is maybe tabling it for one meeting and
asking them,
and then
thinking about
seeing
it.
if we can reach out,
Their group thinks.
and then
Well,
bring it
let
back.
people digest it, too,
or
and see
what the
if
thoughts are.
Yeah.
What they thought.
The other thing to consider is that this committee has worked really hard to raise the 22,000, and I would imagine you didn't offer that opportunity to name the playground itself. And so you got to think of it, if people have given large donations in the past, that you got to factor what was presented to them at the time of the fundraising.
The town paid $600,000 for the playground, so.
There's that point.
Yeah, it is.
And the other thing is that if they wanted to, I would have said, maybe they might have offered that as part of their donation. I'm only saying because it's public property, and
Right.
anything that's owned by the public is the purview of the Board of Selectmen to grant naming rights. We're very reluctant to do it most of the time. But my only reason for mentioning is because, I didn't serve with her. Sean did on the board. I just know the tremendous things that came out in her obituary and her,
Well, she was
what you're
instrumental
saying, in so many things.
North Scituate in it.
She was
in
in
of itself,
preserving
right?
the
WPA
the
building.
WPA
Yeah.
building.
And the
Her
clock
estate
and all
paid
that.
for that to keep it up and going, and so that's my own reason why it's so fitting, such it's right next to it, and I don't know. That was my only reason for saying it.
It's a great idea. Do we have a process for reviewing honorific naming? Is there, just as the new
We
kid?
don't do it that
Not
often.
really, yeah.
It could be Sue's something, too. It doesn't have to be, it could be fun.
Phippen Fun Park, or, I
And-
don't know, just to play with it.
Sorry.
Ann Burbine, Pennycrest Road. I agree with John. Sue Phippen has been instrumental in the town in terms of what she has done over many, many years. She was instrumental in putting together the WPA building. The playground will always be, whether it's North Scituate Playground or whether it's Seaside, whatever. You might want to consider naming the WPA building the Susan Phippen Memorial WPA building, so that her name is associated with, because that was a true pet project of hers. And she worked long and hard with some CPA money in that. There were a lot of donations, a lot of hard work, a lot of in-kind, but she was the one that brought that building back from the rubble. So I think the playground's the playground, and it should be not in memorial, but rather fun, and the building
Maybe it's
itself,
like
the Sue Fippen.
Seaside, but at Fippen Park or something.
We don't have to decide tonight.
No, we don't have to
so,
decide
yeah.
tonight, so I think we're hearing a lot of good feedback. And I would feel more comfortable talking to her estate folks, honestly, to see if it's in line with their goals and desires of her legacy as well. You know, I'll touch base with them as well. Do you mind if we table it? Do you feel you need to have a name for this Sunday?
No.
Okay.
I don't feel, do you? Are you people?
I think we're okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they just want their children out there playing.
Yeah, I
We
think
just
so
want
too.
them.
Yeah, okay.
Will you
Just
be
want to make sure
making a
everybody's on
sign?
board.
There will be some, a sign at the playground indicating, specific people who donated for benches, et cetera.
Sure.
Right,
That's
but will be
separate,
there
yeah.
a name sign as well?
No.
We
Not
talked
yet.
about it, and it might be part of the $22,793.92 that would come out of there. I mean, but they have talked about that, but nobody had really made a decision on, or talked really about, other than that other playground name.
Right.
and that was only,
Or
I
just
think
the
that
North
was,
Situate
I
Playground.
should say, just to go on record, I think the one thing that was mentioned, and whatever happens, but was just in honoring the work that went into the original one that was then torn down. A lot of us spent many hours there, and I think that that's, you know, besides just kind of saying, okay, that's a great name, now let's move on to the design and the fundraising and
That's a
all
good
of that.
point.
There was thought in that vein.
And Sue Fippen actually was instrumental in the original Seaside Fun as well.
So we could fit in Seaside Fun, whatever, we'll figure it out. You know, maybe there's a way to combine both, to honor both sets of volunteers, you know? Okay. All right, well, we'll table it and give it a little bit more thought, and we'll ask you to come back. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Ladies, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work. We look
Very
forward to
much.
Sunday.
Yes.
The no-name to the no-name playground.
I think it's supposed to stay nice.
Okay, next on the agenda is Stephen Moan, Harbor Master for the non-emergency tow policy. How are you, Stephen?
Great. How are you this evening?
Well, great.
How's everyone?
Did you have a good summer?
I had a great summer.
That's good.
Went very well.
Good, good, good.
So, I'm Stephen Mullen, Scituate Harbor Master, and I'm presenting the non-emergency tow policy. About a year ago, Waterways looked at this, and we actually took a vote on it, and the vote for the policy was unanimous. I had presented it to Tricia. She had a lot of things going on. She wanted to talk to me about it, and then there was a meeting shortly thereafter where she was trying to get the public safety building open, and she said anything that can be, you know, kind of put on hold for a little while should be put on hold. We got through the season, and I just wanted to present this to the selectmen to see if we could get this approved.
Can you tell just the public a little bit what it's about? It looks like it's just a formal policy to authorize you when you can help in
Right.
towing. I did have one comment on my other one. Okay, go ahead.
Right now, what we've been doing is anybody that calls, we just tow them. We tow them off moorings, out of slips, we tow them off the beach, we tow them. And it's not really, it ties up assets. There's a liability that goes along with it. It also, you know, it wears on the equipment. And if we were in the middle of a tow, you really aren't supposed to release the tow. So if an emergency came up, we'd have to try to rush the tow, get them to a safe location, and then take off to the emergency. I'm not saying that we stop towing altogether. If there's an emergency, if it's life-threatening, we go out and do the tow right away. Not a problem, no questions asked, we just go out and take care of it. It's you know, if you ran out of gas and it's a nice day and you're just out there, we kind of go out, monitor it, and wait for the local towboat operator, whether it be a sea tow or you know, there's other companies out there, Boat US, a few other authorized tow companies by the Coast Guard that could take the tow in, and we just monitor the situation. That way we're not tying up our asset if an emergency came up. So where we got it from was the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators, and they reviewed towing operations from different agencies, whether it be harbor masters, police, state police, and I believe even the Coast Guard has a, they don't really tow anymore,
So it's a pretty standard policy.
pretty much.
Okay.
And that's why I attached the NASBA policy,
Mhm.
and what we did was we just inserted the word Scituate.
Steve, what happens if you're out there, or do you go out there at all, or when somebody's calling who's not in distress, but, do you go out there at all, or what's the
We do.
plan then? Okay.
Yeah,
So do you stay with them, in other words, in the process until the tow comes out, or?
If they called us and said, hey, we're broken down, we're at anchor, we're fishing, the boat won't start, can you help us out with, and we ask, do you have towing? And they say yes or no. If they say yes, then we ask them, who the tow company is, and, we'll call the tow company for them. If they're having an issue, we'll go out and stay with them. If there's little kids on board, what I did in the town I came from was it was all based on reasonableness and, the person on scene, kind of his decision on what to do. Where, I had taken, adults and some kids off the boat and pulled the boat in, because you can run into a problem towing a boat.
So that's my reason for asking. In other words, you act as the conduit in the event that they call and they need a tow, then you call. But if you actually go out there physically, you got to remain until that sea tow comes, I presume.
Unless they say they're all set and they're okay, we still can monitor the situation even if we're in the general area.
Well, I ask you because that to me would be the area where you get a little liability. If you leave, something happens. The fact you're on scene and then you end up leaving the scene without the sea tow or whoever's coming to take the boat, you're creating a potential exposure.
And
That's all.
it just comes back to, we talk to the operator of the boat, and, if he says, I guess, I'm all set, I'm going to wait for sea tow here, and he's continuing to fish, or he's continuing to sit on the spit, playing in the water, and we know sea tow's en route. I think it was in that policy from NASBA, what they discussed.
That's the only concern I have is that once the town commits to do something and the town leaves, while they're still not necessarily connected to being removed, the exposure town could have.
Yeah.
It's the same thing if a police officer comes to a scene and they say, okay, we'll leave, and then all of a sudden something happens, the town would have exposure, and rightly so, because you're on scene when there was a potential problem. Right. That's the only thing that I would foresee
We can
as a
stay
problem.
on scene. It's not, that unreasonable for us to stay on scene. That's what we had, what we used to do was kind of just stay on scene, monitor the issue. If an emergency came up, it's a life-threatening emergency, we got to kind of go.
Right. I was just going to say, I know like during the storms, sometimes they're forced to leave the scene if they're, or no, they don't leave the scene. They leave the scene sometimes, but if like there's a down wire, I don't think they have to maintain that, right? They can't leave.
Police or fire emergency?
Police or fire, yeah, they're stuck, right? Or
They may have to stay with.
But that's
This is a little bit different,
It's an emergency service, right?
Right, but and then if it's not an emergency situation, and there were members of the commission here, and
And these
they're
are
competing-
non-emergency.
Right.
This is a non-emergency tow
Right.
policy. It's not an emergency.
Okay. Right.
An emergency tow policy is
That's different, I get that. No, I'm just saying,
different.
if you're there, if something,
Yeah.
that was my only question I have, is a gap
Yeah.
in time, that's all.
Well, the policy does state that the first line, if somebody calls for a non-emergency, they contact a commercial assistance first. That's the policy. They don't just jump in the boat and go out. So that kind of helps.
Should they be in the business of towing when there's companies that do that for a living? I think that's where this kind of came from.
That makes sense.
Okay.
And the reason why I mention it is because before you go out, God bless, and tow, that's the call would be made to the tow company, But my only fear is the moment the town gets involved, it's just the leaving, that's all, because if something happens, I could see liability, but that's just me looking at it. But if the commission's fine with that, and
You could go-
I'm not trying to thwart anything here, I absolutely agree with what you're trying to accomplish.
I'm trying to find the section from what Nasbro was talking about.
We got the NASBOR.
They just changed the name, I think.
It was on page 3 at the bottom. It says March 24th, 25th, 2010. It says, the subcommittee training analyzed and wrote the policies, and they reviewed, approximately 9 were reviewed, and the commonality included the following, and the last line is agency assets to be freed for higher priority missions as quickly as possible. So they're not kind of being tied up.
I have a stupid question.
Yeah.
Why don't we just say that it's the harbor master's department? Why do we have to say agency? You have to refer back to figure
Well,
out who that is.
we
Would
did-
that ever change?
No, what we did, we just took the policy, but on ours, we put in definition. That was what Al had suggested. Agency and agency communication center refers to the town of Scituate Harbor
Yeah.
Master Department
Okay.
under the policy.
Any other questions or any other further discussion?
I mean, conceptually, it sounds like a right thing to do. I don't,
Yeah, I mean, we still,
we just don't want to expose ourselves to legal situations, and
no.
and you want to help.
And I'm trying to lessen our exposure, because when we tie up alongside of that boat, and even though it says we're not responsible for the damage, it's still gonna come back to us, when you tie up to it.
How often does this happen?
When I first got here, we were towing boats out of slips and off of moorings, and I was shocked.
I think Tony's question, does it come back to haunt you? Is that what you were saying? You know, you did damage to my boat. Does that doesn't
Oh,
happen very often.
that doesn't happen that often. I thought you meant how
Well, I
often
did.
are we
Both.
towing?
Both, too.
I just looked,
I mean, it's
after
kinda
my first
different if
season, I
it's-
was looking at like we're towing an awful lot.
It seems to me it's different if it's a boat that's tied to a dock that needs to be moved, or a family that's out in the middle of the ocean that the motor doesn't work,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's where, again, we go back to, you stay, you monitor the situation. If CETO is gonna be more than an hour out, then you just start towing the boat in until CETO can take over. And that's, again, up to the person in charge of the towboat at the time. You know, you're running it in, if it's not great weather, you're not gonna transfer the tow. You're just gonna continue on until you get into safe harbor. Also,
From the waterways, guys?
Yeah, I mean, this was a no-brainer for us. He was getting calls all the time, and I go back historically. Literally, people from a dock, you need to take me over to the boatyard. And we don't have 20 boats as a harbor master. You know, we have a couple boats, that's it. And so, he's right, they should be out there patrolling versus doing these convenience tows. So this was like a 10-minute discussion that we had in waterways, where it was a no-brainer. And it's not an emergency situation, night, you know, on a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, if you're fishing and your motor won't start, you used to be able to call the harbor master. Harbor master, within 3 miles, he'd come get you and put you back in your slip. And that's just not good.
We were
use of
going-
the waterways, the harbor master's resources.
I was speaking to some of the staff before, right after I got here, and I said, well, where do you go? And he said, well, we've gone out 5 miles out and towed a boat back. I mean, you're tying up a boat for hours.
Yeah.
Hours.
Dave, just your name, just give your name and,
Sorry,
yeah.
Dave Friedman, Oceanside Drive. And
Yeah.
the Waterways Commission member.
The other part of it is, I have my 100-ton master's license with a towing endorsement. A lot of my staff don't have any towing endorsements. They don't have even, captain's license. So I think myself and 1 or 2 others actually have a license to do it.
It's pulling you out there. Okay. Al?
One of the factors that we're basically competing with private industry. I mean, there's an industry set up to handle these situations.
Right.
and the public is doing it and competing with these businesses, and that's not what drives it, of course, but I think it just clarifies what's the role of the public entity and the harbor master and their responsibilities. They will always handle emergency situations, and they will always not leave someone in a hanging if there's no alternative for them. But this just clarifies
But
that.
this helps prioritize who to call first in what situation. Okay. Sir, yes, just name and address.
My name is Ethan Moss. I'm a Pembroke resident, but I own the Scituate franchise that serves the South Shore in Marshfield, but Scituate's one of my big markets. So, echoing what the harbor master's already said is that their department, their staff needs to be available to perform emergency services, but he said non-emergency a bunch of times. The Coast Guard, which is responsible for putting out policy for search and rescue on the ocean, has a set of guidelines for determining distress versus non-distress, or emergency versus non-emergency. So the stuff that you're anchored, you have life jackets, there's no bad weather coming, even though you're a family of 5 on board, you're basically safe. It's a non-distress, they determine it that's a non-distress situation. The point of the harbor master coming before you guys today is to have a written policy. Without a written policy, it comes down to whoever is in his office answering the phone that day to decide whether they do or don't respond. So the federal government and then some state and local municipalities have the written policy from NASBLA, which the Coast Guard helped develop and has given out the NASBLA. That's called the NASBLA Model Non-Emergency Towing Policy. It's a model to be used to be adapted in your town. It's a policy so that you don't have to play favoritism or nepotism or anything like that and say, oh, that's my brother-in-law, well, we have to go get him. You've got a piece of paper and you can ask the questions and you can follow that policy.
Thank you for that input. It's helpful. All right.
I think from your, from looking at there's the discretion's what you're looking for. I'm not the harbor. I absolutely agree. That's ridiculous. Should not be tied up. I was envisioning a situation beyond the harbor. That's all I'm saying. And once you go, providing you keep that in mind, and there's flexibility here that you're not going to be stuck. That you're able to. That's all.
Anyone else? Any other? Good.
It's been said.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the Town of Situate's non-emergency tow policy as written as of today, October 17th, 2017.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nope. The ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
And thank
Thank
you,
you.
Waterways.
Steve.
That's good.
Thank you very much.
Stay for the warrant article.
Is it tonight?
See one article.
Next on the agenda is to review and discuss the Verizon small cell pole attachment. Brad, hi Brad.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you this evening?
Good. Thank you for having me.
So I know this has to do with Verizon Wireless wanting to put some additional hardware on top of our phone poles, is that?
It is. So I gave Lorraine to distribute to the members today a photo of an example of what this looks like.
Okay.
So this is not one of the 3 locations where they're proposing to do it in town, but again, just an example of a new taller pole. And if you look at the top, it's that cylindrical kind of drum. So that's what sits on tops, and I guess essentially acts like a booster for to augment existing cell service. So Verizon had made an application to the planning board to do a site plan review and special permit to allow 2 of these in Humrock and 1 in the harbor. And again, what the process is they'd come before a site plan review with the planning board, and if they demonstrate I guess the test is making sure they've demonstrated the need, so a kind of a gap in coverage or a gap in if they have a documentation of history of drop calls or kind of service interruptions, they can justify that. That's again what they're claiming. They justify the need for these. So we opened the public hearing with the planning board at our last meeting last week, and the information that was provided I think was a little too technical, and we don't think the board didn't feel that it adequately demonstrated that need to kind of that coverage is I guess lacking in that area. So we've scheduled them to come back for the next planning board meeting on October 26th to hopefully provide something that's a little bit more easily discernible. And then moving forward from there, if the board approves the both the site plan review and the special permit. I believe they would be done, and one of the answers that we addressed with town council today is, after they're done with the planning board, is there any requirement to come back to the Board of Selectmen? And the answer was no. If it's an existing pole location, even if it's a new pole, there's already federal, state, and local approvals in place. So if Verizon, in this instance, the utility provider would have installed the new pole, and Verizon would be coming and adding this attachment on top. So again, the board is trying to get that information so that we can determine the need is there. And then kind of as a parallel discussion, the board had asked, is there any way we can just kind of understand or anticipate how many more of these might be coming? And again, that we didn't really get an answer on that. They said that's kind of, again, going to be based on where they feel is there's gaps in coverage. But for now, it's these two in Humrock and the one on the harbor.
Where is it in the harbor, Brad?
14 Allen Place.
For that matter.
Yeah, 14 Allen Place is the one on the harbor.
It's up on the hill?
Yep. And then 26 Kenilworth Street and 32 Harvard down in Humrock.
What are they again? 32?
26 Kenilworth and 32 Harvard Street.
Harvard, okay.
So one of the things, again, we're going to possibly talk about at the next board meeting is, in terms of what these cells equipment does in terms of boosting service, is there any flexibility with siting? So we want to kind of dig into some of those answers. Does it have to be exactly where they're proposing it? Could it be a few blocks back? Could it be, screened a little bit in terms of, I guess, just some flexibility?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one thing that we'll dig into.
Sean?
So Brad, do they have to put a new pole in to put this on top, or it can go on an existing pole?
They tell us
where there's a gap.
They tell us that, so the new poles are taller, so they're 40 feet, but then you have to
All right.
embed it in the ground, so the new clearance is 34 feet, and then they put this device on top. But that is still taller than the existing poles.
So
I
it'd be
don't have
that.
photos with me now, but I can show you the one they've done in Humrock. I think it's on Harvard Street. You can see the old pole next to the new pole, the height difference. And what they typically do is put in the new pole, transfer all of the existing wires, and then put this on top, and then pull the old pole.
Make sure they take the old poles though.
Yeah.
Right, John? Yeah. Tony?
Sister, yeah.
Is this in proportion? What are the dimensions of that device on top? I mean, it doesn't look bad.
It's a little over 3 feet. I think it's 12 to 20 inches by 34 inches. So I think it acts much like a booster in your home for internet, so it's the same intended kind of thing. And
Brad, is this what they did in Hull, or they use whips in Hull? In Hull, I thought they had short antennas.
They were smaller, I think, weren't they?
I thought, I never really saw a picture.
yeah,
but-
they indicated that the only place they've done this in the South Shore to date is Weymouth.
Okay.
Karen?
Could you just tell the board about the data about the health impacts that they talked about?
Yeah, so again, they have,
She's got some favorites.
and we talked to town council on that too. That's not really something. It's been established that these do not pose any health impacts at the amount of, I don't know the correct terminology, but whatever kind of frequency that they kind of emit or whatever they pass through is, de minimis kind of amount. So it's not a health concern in their point of view.
Mr. Dennehy?
Brad, question I have is, it seems like these, what are they called? The containers on the top? They're-
Small cell
They look
attachments.
like
Yeah.
almost like the electrical
Transformers.
transformers. I was wondering if they're the same size or not. But the question I had was, what's the radius, or the ring, they call it, of what they expect to be able to create reception? So with each cell tower, there's usually a ring or radius of exactly where they anticipate what they're going to collect. Do you have any idea of what they're going to be covering?
Well, that was an interesting part of the conversation that we had at Planning Board. They said they didn't have a tool to predictively tell kind of what this would do once they put it on the ground. They feel that it will increase coverage, but they can't tell you now by how much.
They've got to have some idea.
So again, that's something that the board, and Ann is here in attendance tonight, that's something that we can push on at the next meeting.
Just out of curiosity, because they're going to have to piggyback, I assume, on the towers. That's what they're triangulating with, to try to further boost between the towers and the transfer station, the one up here, and then, that I assume. And then I assume with the booster here in Humrock, they must be, jumping off of whatever cell towers are on Marshfield.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming, because that's the only way that these things would work.
Again, I think the board and I was kind of struggling to understand the kind of documentation that they brought forth to justify these.
So who is it? What carrier is it then?
It's Verizon.
It's Verizon?
Yes.
So does your request for them to come back with all that information?
So they'll hopefully come back with something that we can
26, you said?
understand on the 26th, and then we can pass along any questions that the board has as well.
Okay. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, as Karen brought up, as long as there's not a health concern, you know, the cell service stinks in those areas, so if it helps, great. I mean, we looked at this, Sean, what, 7 years ago, 5 years, I don't remember how long ago, but was a prior technology. I don't think it looks that bad, you know, it's 3 feet on top of a 40-foot pole. So, if it works, great.
I think if you can make a note, though, Sean brought up a good point, a problem that we have with our wires is when they put up another pole to take the old one down,
Yeah.
so we don't have a bunch of useless
I was going to
phone
say,
poles
try
out
to
there.
ask the planning board to make it a condition, because
Yeah.
the issue is usually not National Grid. It's
Getting the carriers.
it's Verizon, it's Comcast that usually is the one that's the issue, because National Grid will put the pole in, and then they're waiting for Comcast or Verizon to move it, and it takes forever, and that's always the issue. But I mean, if Verizon's looking to put it in, then they'll be very quick to pull it out if that's the case, to get it on, typically. That's all.
That's a good point.
Right. Anything else? All right.
No.
Thank
But-
you for,
Yeah, and I can return once we've finished with the planning board, just to give an update as well, kind of let you know where it concluded.
that'd be great.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one moment. Yes, sir?
Hi, Paul Barrett, Michael Lab. This seems to set up an unfair advantage for Verizon for their service, their Verizon poles, but we have other cell carriers in the area that aren't going to be affected by this, that aren't going to be allowed to use those same poles, because Verizon has, you know, all the poles in town from dating back to whatever. How do we deal with the other carriers? How do you allow fair competition and for equal access and equal coverage to be allowed with the other companies?
I think that's a good question for Verizon, because usually anybody can use
When they do
service.
these,
Yeah.
towers, there's all
They rent
carriers.
it, they rent it to the other carriers, so
But those poles are owned, those are towers that are owned by operators who own towers.
No, it's a good question.
Space.
Yeah.
This is, Verizon owns these poles, or National Grid owns these poles. I don't know who owns the poles, but it would seem that this is an unfair advantage to Verizon.
I'm sorry, can I get a name and address?
It was
It
Paul.
was Paul, he said it.
Barrett.
Could you say it again,
Barrett.
sir? Yeah.
What street again?
Michael App.
Yeah, so Mr. Barrett, we can definitely, ask that question at the next
We
planning
have
board.
horrible coverage on Third Cliff,
Yep.
and that's why I'm asking this question, because it just doesn't seem that Verizon will be allowed to do it when other carriers can't.
Mr. Kelly, yes, name and address?
Jerry
Sorry.
Kelly, 56 Morley Road. Paul, I think that Verizon and Verizon Wireless are two separate independent corporations.
They are.
So I don't think that you would have that unfair advantage.
But
Well,
can
it
I
doesn't
jump
matter,
in?
it's still Verizon Wireless and AT&T, Go ahead.
So Brad, can you just ask if they're gonna be the only carrier that's gonna be using this device?
I can, and again, I don't know if this is a proprietary piece of equipment to Verizon, and Comcast doesn't even have it yet, but I can ask.
Okay.
When and if another provider comes up with a similar piece of technology, will they have access to the pole to do the same type of activity?
Or maybe right off that same device, I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
co-locating, I think, or
Yeah, because we certainly don't want 10 of these things up in a, one block radius, so every carrier can boost their own signal, so.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, no other questions, right? Okay. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, next is discussion and vote for the Widows Walk Golf Course Management Contract. Nancy Holt, how are you, Nancy?
Good, thank you very much for having me before you tonight. We have one-year option left on our, excuse me, on our contract with International Golf Maintenance. Sorry, trying to get the frog out of there, it just doesn't want to move tonight. As you can see from the documents that were put before you, I sent an email out to IGM, the acronym for the company, on October 2nd at 8:56 in the morning, asking them if they were interested in the remaining one-year option, and 19 minutes later, they got back to me and said, oh, yeah, we're interested. So what we have before you tonight is whether or not it's in the board's pleasure to grant the final year of this contract, which would be for $504,477, paid in monthly installments equally beginning January 1st, 2018 through the end of the calendar year. And this is for the golf course management. Upon completion of this 1 year, if the the Board of Selectmen so votes, it would have to go out to bid again. The last time it was put out to bid was in 2013, in which case we awarded a 3-year contract to IGM with 2 one-year options. It is an increase of 1.5%, which is $7,455. And all of these 5 years, the amounts were set at the time that the bid was proposed in 2013.
So they've had this contract since the beginning?
I don't know if they've had it since the
Yeah.
very beginning of the course, but they've had it for many, many years.
Okay.
And we do, with that, on the last time this was put out to bid, we did get 3 responses.
What did Bob say?
I haven't talked to Bob about this. As far as I know, he's in favor of this because he knew I was putting it, I had sent it out to Tyler at IGM.
Okay. And this, Nancy, obviously you have this budgeted in our 2018 budget.
Yes, this is the
Okay.
figure we used to build that budget.
Okay, great. All right.
I mean, it's only a 1.75% increase. That's not unreasonable. It was negotiated way back when. And in the past, I think Bob's had nothing but good things to say about this company, so, you know, can't do anything about the drought, but I think they do a good job maintaining the course.
Any other comments?
No.
Questions? Okay.
Nope.
A motion?
Move to extend the contract 01/01/14G with International Golf Maintenance for the professional golf course maintenance of Whittlewalks Golf Course for calendar year 2018 for an amount not to exceed $504,477.
Second?
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? The
Thank
ayes
you.
have it. Thanks, Nancy. Thank you for coming tonight.
You got a good meeting.
All right, next, yeah, we are ahead of schedule. Discussion and vote for CPC applications. Karen Connolly, Chair of the CPC. Hi, Karen.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
We're back again. I would like to say that we found the discussion last time very useful. Normally, CPC does not come before the Board of Selectmen until we've already voted, which I think in the past has caused some frustration because it's kind of hard for us to come to you and say, well, this is it, whatever. So I would hope in future we would, CPC, when I'm not chair, would continue this tradition of coming before the Board of Selectmen to just give you an outline of the applications that are before us and to get your input and to get questions from you. As a result of a number of observations related to the map of the state of Massachusetts, which included Maine, we decided to ask the town archivist to go back and get us additional information, and we didn't feel as though the time was of the essence on that project. So she is going to do that, and we specifically would like to know how rare is the map, what the value of the map is. We wouldn't want to spend $9,000 on something that's worth $1,000. So, so she's going to look into that. We also wanted to know if there was any more evidence of how this map was related to Scituate. So that's where we are on that. We did send you information as to the articles that we approved. Of course, I can't find it right now. So on the rescission issue, I don't know if you had any questions, but we voted to rescind $216,787,000 from the Crosby land acquisition in 2011. We voted to rescind $2,000 from the Higgins-McAllister land acquisition that was authorized in 2012. We voted to rescind the Bates Lane parking that was authorized in 2012, and that was $43,500. And the Damon Preserve acquisition, which was approved in 2014, we voted to rescind $11,032. That totals $273,319, which I believe most of which will go into the open space reserve. Nancy had to check that for me. So that money will go back into the open space reserve.
Wherever it came from, right?
Excuse me?
Wherever it came from.
Yes, and in the case, Nancy checked, in the case of all of those, those monies did come from the open space reserve. So instead of going into undesignated, it will go into open space reserve.
Is the Bates Lane parking going to be rolled into one of the, to the big project?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the idea. That's why we did that.
Okay.
Because we did have money, but it wasn't going to be enough to do Bates Lane at this point. When it was put in, that was a really long time ago. So we're trying to pool money and get all of the parking access done in one project.
Okay. Great.
So I do have at least two of the applicants here tonight. If you had further questions, we voted to approve the community housing, Central Park housing window replacement, the second phase. And because of the fact that there's only $197,814 in the community housing reserve, we are additionally asking the town to appropriate $79,850 from unreserved funds to complete that project. So that would bring the window project up to $277,655. We had a long discussion about that as well. We know you have questions as to why CPC is funding this. The fact is we are allowed by law to fund it. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. So I think for the board, our decision was to recommend to town meeting that we complete this project. We didn't feel as though it was a good idea to leave it half done. But for future purposes, I do think, I don't know what the legal relationship is between the Housing Authority and the Board of Selectmen, but you had some really legitimate questions about, are there other places where you can get funding? So I think that's a future discussion for the board. But we just thought, we've got it halfway done, we should finish it.
Karen, what's the unreserved fund balance going to be after taking the 80,000 out? Do you have that? And if you don't, it's not a big deal.
Well, the unreserved fund balance that we have available right now is $2.9 million.
Okay.
So if you look at it, the only money we're taking from unreserved is the $79,850 for the window replacement, the balance of it, because we're taking the community housing reserve down to zero.
Okay.
Now, they will get money, obviously, when we get to town meeting in the spring. They will get their reserve money back. In the past couple of years, it's been about $180,000. But I point out to you that we have spent a significant amount of money in the past couple of years to create community housing and to do, the cupola was $315,000.
Is that done yet? I saw they were working on it. Okay, I saw the scaffolding up there. Okay. Great.
So, we're also recommending to town meeting that we fund parking and access to CPC-acquired land, and the amount we're requesting is $528,500. Penny Scott Pipes is here. I know you had a number of questions about where, how, and what we're getting for that money. We can certainly afford it. We have the money for it. And just to editorialize, I feel as though we've been going to town meeting for many, many years, saying to people, we're buying this land, and unless it was specifically meant to protect water, that we were going to give people access to it. And we're still telling people to go park at Frank Snow's yard. So, you know, if you go through the back roads to the Hanover Mall, I see all that beautiful, those nice kiosks and parking areas for the Norwell Conservation Land, and I get a little jealous. So what I'm hoping is that by doing all the access for 4 or 5 properties at once, you know, it will, I think the town will be really happy to have this.
Can it all be done at once and under one contract?
Yes. That was our hope.
Okay.
That's our plan.
Okay.
And I know.
Does anybody have any questions for that while we're on it? Do you mind?
Yeah,
Karen, if we
no,
do
no.
Take it that way?
That's fine.
Does anybody have any
Penny
questions?
sent some fairly detailed information about each, what each project would be.
It was received today as a copy. Yeah.
comments that it was a lot of money, but I think that the additional benefit to economic development for the town and tourism, it also supports doing this project. It'll bring people, I mean, people
people in.
drive over to Hanover to go walk those beautiful trails, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Bring them.
Well, also, I think it will hopefully attract more volunteers to help do things like maintain the trails, because we're heavily reliant on volunteers for the conservation trails that we do have. And my hope is that when people see, oh, this is, you know, a town-owned piece of land, it's got a kiosk with a map in it or on it, you can go walk the trails. I just think it will do a lot for,
I think in combination with the other piece that we're going to talk about next,
Right.
It really does open up accessibility to a lot of people.
well, and in particular, I know Penny and has been very diligent in going to the other committees to get their support, including the Commission on Disabilities. They're very excited about this.
John, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
All right, Tony?
Sure, I think, as I said last time, it's an outrageous amount of money. I support getting parking at these facilities, but it just amazes me that it's going to be $130,000 for each one to get some parking spots and a sign, and a wooden sign that has a kiosk with a map on it. So that's what strikes me as, you know, I like the project, I like parking, I know we talked about it, but I think the number is just crazy.
Well, one of the numbers is higher than the others, and it's got to do with the fact that to get access to the Appleton Field, we have to build essentially a road.
So maybe that's one you don't do, I mean.
Well,
one's
that's
that?
probably the
Crosby?
most desirable one.
Yeah.
Penny, would
Crosby?
you like to?
Well, one second.
Well, if Penny can answer some of these questions.
Yep, I'm not, so the one, if you want to go through them,
Frank, sorry, didn't see. Frank, would you like to come up?
so the Damon property, is that going where I've said for 3 years that I don't want it to go? Along the side of the property where the Boisons live, that we may want to swap land again?
The access that's proposed for the Damon property would be next to the Devotion property, but the access road would be against the stone wall to the west, so that's furthest away from them. And the parking to that would be out beyond where their property is. We took the parking from fairly close to the road, and we've moved it back so that it's a ways back, and would still give us the opportunity to work on some sort of swap or whatever.
I don't think they're going to swap when you put a driveway with 11 parking spots on the piece of land that they want to swap for.
I don't think the conversations that I've had with Mr. Devotion were not for that piece, that I've explained to him that it's really the only practical way to go into that property. There is 2 pieces of frontage for the Damon parcel, but the second access point is on the downhill side of Clap Road, and it's wet, and it would not be the ideal spot to access that property. It's a hill, and it's tight, and it just wouldn't be a good spot. But we've had some discussion. I'd like to certainly have more. I'm all in favor of working that through, and that's why I've asked them to design it the way that they did, so that strip would be furthest from their property and put the parking away as far as possible.
Do you have a picture of it?
You have it in the back.
No, but we all have that?
Yep.
It'd be the first.
I got it, Ken.
That's not the next one.
No, that's from my,
See, he wants down here, and, this is from the road. So he's looking at this piece here, not, that's not much farther in, so we can come to the swap. This is the piece of land the man looking for. All right, it isn't here. This is ours, would stay ours. It's just
I get it.
right there, okay?
Well, it was all this. It was 3 acres, so it was something like this. You know, it went.
Sorry, we don't have a bigger.
mean, the swap was for this that came back in here somewhere, right? The 3 acres here for the 9 acres over here?
It
Anybody
dealt
wanna
with this
look at
area
the
here.
maps,
This piece here
Don't
is
know
what
how
they're looking
far.
for.
Al?
This is pretty exaggerated, Tony, I think that what could actually be saying is this, this, and it'll go up, and then they were interested in keeping a buffer
Yeah.
here that would give them property back.
I just hate to see, you know, I think that was a good deal for the town in terms of getting a lot more land that buffered our water supply.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And I think.
But I wouldn't want to put this in if it's gonna deter that from happening, I guess is my point. And I don't know if it is or not, you know, I'm looking at this map for the first time.
If I could just explain a little bit more on the costs. The large number, $350,000 roughly, is the access to the Crosby and Damon parcel.
Well, let's just stick on this one for a second.
Okay, but what we're asking to do is to have this number. One of the reasons we're back doing this is because when the wording for the purchase of the other pieces of land and the access didn't give us the flexibility to move some of this money around. We've been working with Paul Scott, former town engineer, on the design. We've got a preliminary designs. Paul's gone out and done some pricing, so our estimate is based on Paul's pricing, unit pricing for the different
Are we talking about the
aspects.
Damon property?
All four.
The Damon property.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that we're asking for a lump sum of money for the different pieces that would give us the flexibility of, say, to move some funds from one to the other if that were needed. We have a rough budget for each one of the parcels, but one could come in a little bit higher, one could come in a little bit lower. It's considerable that we could table that one access piece for a time being to hopefully resolve this swap piece. Maybe we could accelerate that some, to be quite honest. Part of it's my not having enough time to get back with them and sift through some of that, and it's also been trying to get that support and work out just
How
what
much
would
is the
happen.
Damon one?
66,000.
So I met with Paul and Penny and also Frank to take a look over the proposed engineering plans. And one of the things I looked at was the Damon property in particular because of the potential for a swap. My recollection at that time was that the area of the parking lot was not going to encroach into the area of the potential swap. But I think, this would be one that I would be like, if it's not certain, we need to make sure, because I do want to see potentially a swap down there. I would probably say, but we need confirmation, I would say, because I'd want to make sure we have the opportunity to maybe swap it. But I thought at that time it was out of what they were looking for, Tony. But
Yeah,
I can't tell by this, with this
I mean,
one,
I just
can't
don't recall the conversations being, we want all the land except, that driveway. It was the whole piece that was available, because they wanted to kind of block off their area.
I've met with Mr. Boyce a couple of times. We've had these conversations. I explained to him why it was important for the commission to retain a portion of that. He seemed to be in agreement with that. We're not down to actually making a deal by any means, and it would be you that would do that. But actually, it's even more involved because it was purchased with CPC funds. So we've got some work to do to make that sort of thing happen.
Right.
This is a long discussion that I've had with our commission members, with you folks, with CPC. It is a tremendous amount of money, and at first it was like the critical piece in my mind is the Crosby-Appleton access, because we relinquished our access to that. We can't even get into the property we own without some sort of a road. And it's an expensive road because there's a wetlands crossing and it's fairly long.
So how much is that one?
350?
310.
310.
310.
That's the most expensive.
And what about the other two one? The
Higgins
Bates,
McAllister is 70,000, and
82.5 for the, Tony, even if we do the swap and for some reason we end up having to go on the other side, which is not a good access point on the Damon property, the feeling and the consensus of talking to many people is if we have the funding in place, as soon as, if we want to set this aside, but we'll have the funding in place for the Damon property, Frank will go back to Mr. Devosia, see if we can work out that land swap. We have to get access in. So if the funds are in place, it can be done. Whether it's here or the other one. The other one is a really, it's not advantageous at all to come in on the other side. And I will say, we did have Mr. Devosia at one point last, I forget if it was last fall or the spring, into Concom, and we explained to him at a Concom meeting that, you know, we'd love to do the swap, but we really need our road there to get in. And he wasn't against us having the road. It was, he does not want parking near his house. And where we pushed, we almost doubled the length of the road from where the original parking was going to be in that open section when you first start in, but we moved it in much deeper so it would not bother him or interfere with whatever his plans were for his property. So we definitely have taken that into consideration in doing the plans, that that swap could still go forward.
Karen, where's the money coming from? Is it coming from Open Space Reserve?
Yeah, Open Space Reserve. We rescinded quite a bit of money last year at annual town meeting back into the Open Space Reserve. We also, by doing the rescissions this year, we're adding more to that reserve fund. So
how much is in that, you know?
There is $691,000 in the Open Space Reserve right now, but that's before we do these rescissions. Right, Nancy? So you'd have to add...
The 273 in.
Right. So we're, you know...
I mean, does it make sense to make the 66,000 contingent upon...
If you're not going to do it, I wouldn't put it on there, is my thought. We don't put a placeholder for something, and we can just go back every 6 months or before the town.
We have to have access. How would...
Well, let me point out, the warrant is done. You know, we could decide to reduce the amount on town hall floor. But that would mean that the CPC would have to go back and revote this.
You could go forward without the David property on there.
Well, we already voted the total amount, and the total amount is what's in the warrant. And so what's in the warrant is in the warrant, and I can't help the fact that the warrant is due on, we had to have it in on September 28th. So, so what we've done this before. You know, if we decide we need to amend the amount, we can't increase the amount, I don't believe, but I think we could decrease the amount on town hall floor. But again, it would necessitate going back, and I guess that I don't, as many times that I've talked to Penny and Frank about this, I still don't quite understand the whole devotion problem. So, but, you know, I'd like to point out that...
What was the, Karen, what was the CPC vote? Was it unanimous?
Yes.
Okay.
To spend $528,000 to get access to essentially, we've spent $6 million on land, so you're looking at 8% of the cost. And I grant you it's not giving access necessarily to all of the CPC land, but a substantial amount of it. And it's been a long time coming. And I don't think things are going to get cheaper as we go along. I think they're just going to get more expensive, so.
Can I just also add, you know, we are trying to do some things with volunteers. The Hubble piece of property, through a series of Eagle Scout projects, we wound up with a trail. It's nice. And there is no parking on either side other than along the side of the road, but fortunately Indian Trail and Old Gannett Road aren't busy places. But it took a couple of years of volunteers to get that trail through, and a number of Eagle Scouts to get there, but we did that. We also have volunteers now that are working on a trail that's gonna go from Bates Lane over to Higgins McAllister. I got an email today from one of the fellows that they're ready to do some chainsaw work, and they're real excited about this. So we have volunteers, and it was mentioned before that hopefully this will spur on others. The new appointment that you made to Concom is very interested in trail work and getting out the word, and the article after this one will do even more. So
what are the paths made of? What are you actually doing for work? Are you cutting down trees, I assume, and?
Most of it's brush. We try to work around natural pieces, work through stone walls, but there's brush cutting, there's tree clearing, there's trail marking, and not to confuse this with the next piece that's coming up, but then there'll be mapping and all that sort of thing that go along with that. So, but the piece that we're working on now is physically building roads and parking areas and stuff that we really would have a hard time getting done with volunteer help. If we were talking,
We couldn't get it done with volunteer.
Yeah, sorry.
I know.
It's not possible.
I know I sound like, I understand. Just, what are you doing? You're cutting down the trees and the bushes. What are you putting for asphalt?
So
What are you
this
putting-
road, the road access is actually gonna be clearing of a swath of land that could be 30, 40 feet wide, and several hundred feet long, depending on which location it is. We'd be removing stumps and subsoil, be replaced with gravel, and there'd be drainage culverts where they're needed. It will be a surface of gravel.
So it's just be gravel, yep.
And then the parking area would be anywhere from 8 to 12, 15 cars, I think. And again, with a packed surface of gravel so that someone that with mobility issues could get out of the car and move around. We're also going to build in a couple of locations. One of them was Damon, and the other was Bates Lane. Several hundred feet at each location of travel way similar to the one that we have at the Driftway next to Dunkin' Donuts that people can park at and then go down to the Herringbrook. So it'll be a path that someone could use, say a wheelchair or some other device. Penny and I attended the Disabilities Commission's group the other night and had the opportunity to talk with them and their kind of needs and thoughts on this, and they're excited about it. You know, it's not.
What's the most expensive part of the construction? Is it clearing the trees, or is it like of the, whatever, $70,000?
It's the heavy work. It's the clearing, the excavation, the fill, the drainage. There's a wetlands replication area at Crosby. Those conservation people are brutal.
Did you get mitigation? Have to talk to those people.
Sean, did you have a comment?
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
Tony, you good?
I'm good for now, yeah.
All right, Sean.
What would you think of the idea of, and I'm in favor of it, but Tony, like Tony, it's a lot of money, and I think I, spoke in support of Tony last time on that idea. Pick one and do it right. Not that you're not going to do them wrong. Just pick one. Let's see what it comes out like.
Well,
and then
the first priority, and it's no secret, is the Crosby
yeah,
piece.
you can't even get there.
Right.
So, and I think you and I have had a lot of conversations about it. I'm somewhat familiar with it, but and that's the most expensive. But maybe pick that one and see. The money won't go anywhere necessarily. The balance.
But you lose the economy of scale of doing it all at once, I would think.
No. You're not doing a subdivision. It's gravel. It's clearing, bringing a machine and.
But
and
if
you
one
said-
contractor got the bid to do all four, you might have some.
And it gives us the flexibility if Crosby, because that wetlands crossing, if you read the front sheet here, it's a huge wetlands crossing that is going to be very costly. And by doing them all together in this one lump sum, You can move money around. One problem we had with the Bates Lane, we got 50,000 for that. Yes, it was quite a few years ago. At that time, we weren't gonna do a handicap, a 400-foot by 5-foot handicap hard-packed surface for somebody to get in the woods. Things have changed. We have to do these things nowadays. So you can, it gives you the flexibility from a contractor's standpoint of moving the money, the funds around. It might be 310, it might be 330 for the Crosby piece. Bates Lane might, instead of 82, come in at 72. We can move the funds around to where they're absolutely needed. Because, let's face it, we never know what we're gonna run into. We do know the Crosby is a major undertaking. Yes, Tony, it's a road that we have to put in. We have to put in culverts.
What type of culverts, Penny?
We have to put in bottomless culverts.
Box culverts? Concrete, box culverts?
Concrete, but they're three-sided, so that
Yeah.
we can have a natural bottom.
Bottom. And, you know, so that's a very, very expensive project. And wonder if it goes over. We don't have the leeway to fudge funds around. If we do everything at once.
You can't keep saying move funds around and fudge funds. Those are the things that we don't want to do.
But, wait a minute.
Don't say that a second.
No, but, wait.
I know what you meant.
I think
Really,
it's
do you
unfair.
understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
She
you
just
want
wants
flexibility.
flexibility.
I
one
understand,
piece.
I've heard her say it 4 times.
All right, well, and you've asked it 4 times, so we're answering. No, I would just like to say that we understand that it's expensive, but again, I think that if we have to wait for every town meeting, we're doing this in the fall, which is slightly unusual, but, you know, these projects go on for years and years and years, and they don't get done for years and years and years, because we have to wait for town meeting. So,
So I've looked at this, and, you know, obviously, we've spent a great amount of money to purchase these properties in the West End. $6 million, I think.
$6 million.
And over the course of the past 15, 16 years since we put CPC in.
Since 2003.
So
First.
I look at it, knowing that it's coming out of the Open Space Reserve, which is a part of this, you know, obviously, gaining access for all people in town is important. I look at the property on Dover Street in Norwell, how it's used an awful lot. It's overused, and that's one of the ones they have. I think you have another one at Litchfield Trail, I think off of Grove Street, or whatever it's called, heading out. They don't have much, but we have all this land. Given the fact that we don't have access, and I know building a parking lot when you're fording open wetlands is going to be expensive. As a town, we have to adhere to it. There's no mitigation or variances. We got to set the tone, set the standard for people that we expect to live up to it. I just see it as it's a win-win. It has to be accessible. I know that's usually a very costly component, but we need to afford it for people, not just with disabilities, people who are older and frail, who's not going to go hiking through the woods probably, but at least have the opportunity to go out. I know it's expensive. I just, knowing it's coming from the Open Space Reserve, I see the value of putting these parking lots in there. I think you're absolutely right. I know that we could probably do one and see how it goes. My fear would be it'll take another 7 or 8 or 9, 10 years because something other like Devotion might come up, or I think that's a separate opportunity that could be at no cost, but other properties, and I think those monies will go to it. We'll have more land without the accessibility component, and I just think at this point it's a great opportunity for us to, shall we say, put 4 different parking lots that you gain access into the West End, and the idea between at least the Bates Lane and the what's the one that's up north of it, Holly Crest, Higgins, you can almost link them by hiking from one end to the other. When you get to Crosby, that's a whole legal issue. It's been a legal issue because when we purchased it, we didn't have access to it, and so that was expunged. So that has to happen. And granted, there's no linkage between Crosby and our Appleton Farm and the others, but I think in the big picture, when we see the puzzle, these parking lots are the cornerstones for linkage going all the way forward. And so I think putting them in now makes sense, because in the long term, those puzzle pieces are going to be completed, and we might be able to get easements to cross over. So I see it as a good thing going forward. I know it seems expensive, but when you factor in a lot of accessibility and you have to build it, it's not going to be obviously asphalt, it's going to be hard packed, but there are AAB, or Architectural Access Board, regulations under the code that you have to adhere to. And we need to set that standard. I know that sometimes people complain about it, but I'm like, I don't care about the complaints. Not that you're complaining, Tony, you're not. Other people outside will say, well, why are you spending so much money? You know, who's going to get out of a wheelchair and do this? That's not the argument. Everybody should have access to it. So I understand the cost, and I know it sounds expensive, but I think it's the time. That's just my thoughts.
Sean?
I think you missed my point. I just want to see one of them done. I'm just, how long have we owned these properties? And how long have we been talking about building access and parking and stuff like that?
Since like 2004.
But here it is.
Well, could I point out that last year, at last town meeting, we had the conservation restriction question. And that looked like a big amount of money, but it's because it had been building up over the years and we hadn't done it. I would suggest in future, when we purchase open space, that we put into that article an amount of money for a parking lot and access, if that's proper for that piece of land. We simply didn't do it, and so that's why we're facing this big number. So if you'd amortize it over the past, say, 10 years, it doesn't seem, it's not as much money as it looks all in the aggregate. So I understand that it's a lot of money.
So I think it's a ton of money, but I agree with John. I mean, I just remember being on the advisory board years ago and asking, how is the public going to access this land? How are they going to use it? And we were always promised that there would be a custodian for this land and that things would happen. It just didn't happen. So I think we've been waiting a long, long time to give our citizens access to all this beautiful land that we own out there. People don't have places to walk their dogs. We have a new dog park going in, but still, there's some really beautiful land out there and no place to park, and so I know it's a lot of money.
So I'll play devil's advocate for a second. Are we going to put a parking lot on every piece of conservation land that we purchased?
No, I
That's a good
don't
question.
think you have to.
I think that should be part of the discussion about any future purchases.
Maybe $300,000, that's a lot of money that you could buy more land with. How much did we pay for Appleton? Probably not a heck of a lot more than that.
Well, it was two parcels. It's Appleton and Crosby combined that will afford access to both of them. And we knew that one would be costly when we purchased it because we were relinquishing the access, the cart path that.
I mean, my point is, I think we've got to figure out, are we going to make access to every piece? Because people are using this now. You probably walk it all the time. And people that are diehard people are out walking trails on these properties. Granted, it doesn't have access to everybody. I wouldn't do and I don't walk out there, so I don't know the condition. But I think we got to have some sort of an idea of what we're going to spend the money on. And is that the piece of property we want to spend $350,000 on?
Yeah.
All right, so I think we could talk about this for a long, long time. Are there any questions that you don't feel have been answered by the CPC? I mean, they've obviously debated it a long time as well. Their board supported it unanimously, and we don't have to vote right now. We're going to vote on the warrant later on in the evening.
I have just one question.
Sure.
On the sort of inaccessible land, how many natural trails are there already? Are we looking at a situation where you have a parking lot and no place to go?
We got lots of trails already.
I haven't been back there.
And there will be more.
There's up Bates Lane, there's a nice network of trails that cover a good portion of the Bates Lane property, and they're accessible from some parking at Mount Hope and across from the Bates Lane small parking area. The other parcels are something you just have to walk along the road and walk into.
But there are trails.
And the Crosby Appleton one, you really have to march through a wetland or a good chunk of woods to get to that. It's not an easy piece to access right now.
But there are cart paths on the Damon, on the Crosby. There's old cart paths. And the next group that's going to be coming up they are working on those trail systems. So yes, the answer to your question is there are quite a few trails. There's miles and miles out there already, but we don't have any parking
Okay.
to get to those trails.
Anything else that you feel?
No, I mean, I want the trails and the parking access, I just don't like the price.
Need 5 of them.
We don't like the price either, but that's what it came out to. We were shocked.
And we've debated this as a committee because we've been, this is important to get part of it, and we certainly want it supported at town meeting by everyone as well. Believe me, I'm all for, I'd take a half a loaf over a whole one on this one, but in the consensus of all the different groups, it's been to move forward with this.
With the whole thing.
But we'd like to move it forward as well.
I get it. You guys are shocked, so you should understand why we're shocked and we're questioning it. You guys are conservation people. You want them. There's people out there that don't. They want seawalls. So, it's just,
And we have other
it's
projects.
just
as
part
well.
of what we have to do. We have to debate every issue and
Yeah.
find the merit for it, because at some point in time, we're gonna be looking for $500,000 to do something with CPC funds. I guarantee you. In the very, very near future.
But it's coming from open space, so.
Well,
And there's
it may
always
be
going to
open
be
space.
something we want.
True.
There's always
Okay, the
something.
maps, do we need to go over the 38,000
She
for
is.
the maps?
Marilyn? The original,
If you folks are done, right?
Yeah.
With this, we're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're done
Thank
with
you,
us.
Penny.
this is Marla Minier. She's been working on this mapping project. Since we put the article into the warrant, we've had a number of meetings to try to refine the budget, and as of last night, CPC, the original figure was $52,000. We reduced it to $38,490. So if you have questions about the details, Marla's been working very hard with the various people who are working on various parts of the project to try to make sure we understand what we're getting for our money and, exactly what the amount totals to.
So I have one question, just off the top. Is this going to be coordinated if both pass, right? So if the parking lot passes, is this all being done in coordination to ensure like what work you do doesn't, because are you putting up map
Yes, that's right.
things, whatever? I just want to make sure it's all coordinated.
Well, put it this way, if the parking doesn't happen, then what will happen is it will affect what this group does. So we could allocate the money, but if there's not parking access to some of these properties, then they probably would, only do the properties that we know we have access to.
Okay.
So we'd probably wind up spending significantly less if that were to happen.
Or we could create the trails and have people park on the side of the road and still have a little bit of access. They need to be mapped. There are a lot of good trails already on all of the properties that we're talking about. Howard Matthews and my husband Rich Minier have created trails on Higgins McAllister. That is all mapped, all done. I've walked it. It's great. It's beautiful. We just need final approval from Concom to make it an official trail. So that one is finished. Bates Lane is finished. I've walked Damon with a group.
And all volunteer, I might add.
All volunteer,
So thank
yes.
you.
I've walked the Damon property with a group of people. There are many cart paths on Damon, other trails. That is a beautiful piece of property. It's ready to go. It's ready for people to walk on. And what this proposal that we're looking towards is to make people feel safe in the woods, to make them feel comfortable so that they know where they are. And so we are proposing mapping the trails. We have a wonderful group of people that we can use GIS, GPS technology to map the trails. They'll be part of the town website, so you can access these maps on your phone, on your computer at home, print out the maps. We hope to print some small paper maps that people will have access to at town hall, the library, kiosks. Yeah, we want the citizenry to have access to all the beautiful land that we've purchased over the last many years.
And not get lost.
And not get lost. And also part of this proposal is signage and trail markers, so that if there was someone who twisted an ankle inadvertently, that emergency personnel would know exactly where that person was. We'll have it all numbered, ready to go, just like all of the trails that Trustees of Reservations has.
Okay.
Similar to that.
Any questions for Marla?
I mean, I'll say, you know, and Maura brought up a very good point. You know, this is all volunteer. I know that you and your husband aren't getting a dime of the $38,000, you know, and you put in sweat equity for, you know, for years, and I get that. But this number, again, is a little bit shocking when you look at $38,000 to make maps in our woods. I mean, it just seems like a
There
big
are
number
also two bridges, because Higgins McAllister needs a bridge for access from that.
So those are
area.
physical bridges?
Physical wooden
Bridges
bridges.
that are included in this?
That are included
Okay.
in this proposal. And again, those bridges will be built with volunteer labor.
So it's not just mapping?
So it's not just mapping, it's signage, it's
See a boardwalk.
boardwalks.
Yeah. It's much more
And the town will
encompassing than a
own the
map.
files, the GIS, GPS files, so that going forward, as technology improves, we'll be able to use that technology to make things even more
Yeah.
robust, yeah.
So we're just talking paper, signage.
And literally the mapping, sending someone around, and he's going to create all of the verbiage about, you know, what you're seeing, where you are, anything, you know, of significance. So it's a fairly robust package for the GIS, GPS mapping. And there's also this, I'm going to get this wrong, QR codes.
QR codes.
Yeah.
That,
Scanner.
if I understand, yeah, you can put your phone on it, and it will take you to a link, and you can then find out, you know, where you are and what about it, and so I think for the,
I was curious, like, with the GIS, so golf courses, they'll have something on your pin, so when you're at the tee box, you can determine the exact, or if you're in the fairway, the exact distance. I'm assuming that's part of the process of having like some kind of like
Yes.
GPS chip or something at various locations, so,
Well,
you know.
what has to happen, and why it's costly, is that someone has to physically walk every trail, every inch of every trail, so that it gets the signal from the satellite, and then it can be put on to a map.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of time for the people that we've been working with to do, and they
So are we
are.
hiring a company to come in and do this?
Well, it's
Is
not,
that-
it's Steve Ivis, I don't know if you know Steve, and his son Justin, and their friend Greg Peterson, Jeff Peterson, and they basically love this. They're passionate about this, and if we were to, they have a company that does this, and if we were to pay them their going rate, it would be a lot more than what this is, but they really love this. They live in Norwell, so we're getting a bargain from them, even though you may not think it's a bargain, it is a bargain.
So can you break down the $38,000 real quick? It's like, what's a bridge, like, is it a bridge that's, is it a
So for the
20-foot
mapping,
bridge?
excuse me, could
I'm
I
sorry,
just point
yes.
out that on the GIS, GPS mapping, it's a $20,000 estimate right now. We'd have to get 3 bids.
Yeah.
So,
So that's the biggest piece.
yes,
So it's 20 grand for the GIS mapping?
yes.
Signage and plaques, which is 6,400. The 2 bridges, walkways, benches, 10,000. And 2,090 for print maps.
And the trimmer?
That's
No
gone.
trimmer. We took it
Oh, you
out
took the
last
trimmer
night.
out? Okay.
We can't pay for that.
I didn't think so.
And the bridges, are they like 2-foot bridges that are going over a little brook, or is it?
4 feet wide, 3.5 to 4 feet. They're fairly close to the ground, like more considered a boardwalk than a
Right.
bridge. But, it'd be,
Correct pitch and ramps and all that stuff.
yeah, it's been interesting working with the ADA group and even with trails in the woods, we're gonna be having to look for variances and things like that. I mean, nothing's unregulated. It will all need some form of compliance, and so we'll work to make sure all those are dealt with properly.
Marla, how many miles is it of trails, do you think?
Oh, a lot. How
20-ish.
would you know? Do you have any idea?
About
I guess
5, 10?
Howard Matthews. I've been doing trail maintenance for about 10 years, I guess. Anyway, if I were to guess at the trails off of Bates Lane, I would say we have probably walking all 5. We just made new trails, we flagged new trails on Higgins McAllister, and with the unit we were carrying, it said 2.5 miles. Damon, I would say we probably got 1.5 miles, and the property, it's probably going to be a couple of miles, I'm saying.
It's about 10 miles. And it's the same 4 properties that we're building the,
That's the only ones I spoke to. Yes.
yeah, are those the ones that
So
this
in
is?
addition to that, we were focusing on the ones that the parking will be created, but also the Ellis property, which currently has parking, Hubble in North Situate, and the Driftway Park area. We thought that that needed to be on a map. And
So all
that's
those are-
easy. So that would be 7 parcels that is included in this proposal.
The size of the big maps.
Okay.
It's like 2 of them,
Yeah.
but like that size.
Yeah, yeah, 2 maps that size that we could put at town hall.
And those big maps would be permanent types of maps, and one would probably go to the library and one to town hall, and it would include all the conservation, CPC conservation land. And if the selectmen wanted to add some of the parcels that are, not ours, CPC, we could probably do that as well, but probably a discussion for another time.
So I've also been in touch with Lisa and Mark Fenton, and we're working hand in hand with them. So as these trails are mapped, then it will become part of that historic Scituate Trails website, in addition to being on the town website.
Which CPC also paid for that, so it's kind of a nice,
We'd be able to link to that also off the
Yes.
town website?
yes, they're actually on the town
Make
website
sure
now.
the links, okay.
Can I just add one piece, and maybe it got clarified at the last meeting. I don't think that right now we're gonna have a component that you can look this up and say, you are here. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct.
You're gonna be able to pull up a map, you'll be able to look at trailheads, the signage on the end of the trails, there'll be squares along the trail, but it won't be the technology that you can look at it and say, you're here. If you were savvy enough to be able to use that along with some other devices in your phone, you certainly could figure out where you are, but that's not part of that technology.
I'm sorry to disagree, but the meeting we had with the GPS, with Steve Ivas, said that we would be able to, you'd be able to put your phone on
QR code.
QR.
At a specific
And it will
spot.
tell you. So,
But not just anywhere along the trail.
no, but on where there is one of those
We have Google for that.
markers, you'll be able to put your phone on it.
They're gonna
So-
be, Gary Myerson, they're gonna be putting the trails on Google Maps as well. So you'll be able to, if you have your phone, in theory, you can do your here.
Right.
It's on Google Maps.
Okay. Anybody have any additional questions?
No.
Thanks for all that.
John?
No, it's good.
Well, thank you for all the work, and
Thanks.
we'll be voting on the warrant in a little bit down the agenda.
Any other questions for me?
No. Are you still the chair, or is that passed?
I'm still the chair until a new chair, whoever it might be, in July. But we just got, well, I'll still be on the committee. We did get our applications in for the Springtown meeting, and we've got quite a number of them from the Beach Commission, which is kind of interesting. And we do have the one for the track. I'm losing my, so, yeah, the track.
All right.
Thanks, Karen.
All right, thank you.
Good job. Very
Thank you.
thorough.
Have a great night. Thank you. Okay. Discussion and vote for the warrant articles that we have before us. Anybody have a
So the
copy
la-
of the latest?
It's the paper copy, right?
Yes.
Paper copy for this, any changes were highlighted in red since the packet.
So, does everybody have their packet?
Yep.
Okay, any questions we went through some of this last week, I think, with Nancy and Al, so does anybody have any additional questions on, we'll just go through them quickly. Article 1 with the unpaid bills.
No.
Article 2. Fiscal year 2018 budget reconciliation.
Nope.
Okay. Widows Walk improvements, Article 4. Any additional information, question for that? What's that? The board have any question on four?
Nancy, can you just review that one, the one, the money's not coming out of taxation, right? It's coming out of,
Article 3?
Article 4, Widows
4.
Walk, is that what you're talking about, or 3?
well, 3 or 4?
Oh, sorry.
Because the,
So Article 3 was an enterprise fund reconciliation. Right now, the estimated deficit for fiscal 17 for Widows Walk, so retained earnings deficit is $135,000. I did speak to the DOR this week. The Deputy Director of the Bureau of Accounts did agree with what we're proposing to do in this article. He wanted to check with one other person. He hasn't gotten back to me yet. What we're proposing to do is to amend Article 3 of the annual town meeting, which put funds from Widows Walk receipts into a Widows Walk capital stabilization fund and reduce it from $185,000 to $15,000. That would put those $170,000 of estimated Widows Walk receipts back in play, and that would be what would be used when we do our tax recap to cover the prior year deficit. You have to raise any deficits of the prior year in the following year's recap. If we can't do it with Widows Walk receipts, we'd have to do it with free cash. So we have to resolve the deficit based on the feelings of the board from prior decisions. We want the enterprise fund to resolve their own deficit, and Widows Walk can do that. We would just have to amend this particular vote.
so that's what I would vote to do, to take it out of the Widows Walk capital stabilization fund. I mean, that's, the reason it's going in there is because the debt got paid off, and that's the excess money that we're gonna put towards that. But the drought is what caused this huge deficit, and that's what, you know.
And the receipts have picked up this year.
Okay.
So
And
that's
then
what this is doing,
That's for 3, yep.
as long as the DOR says it's fine.
So far, they were okay, but we want to check one of the first.
Okay?
Okay. And then 4,
Wait, do you have a question on 3?
I thought he had a question on 4.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was just gonna wait and see if anybody else had a question first on 4, and then we'll go to Chris.
So 4 is just the capital project of doing the
We may
parking.
want to hold off on number 4.
We did, so we said,
There's been quite a bit of discussion about this is a capital item. It should go through capital planning. Hasn't gone through capital planning. There's some questions about do we want to pave the parking area before we know what we're going to do with the clubhouse? Are we going to be, or should we be moving forward with some more input, more broad input of what we should be doing with the clubhouse? I think this may be a better put on the spring town meeting warrant rather than this one. I think it would have a better chance at passing through town meeting in the spring after more work has been put into it. My 2 cents.
That makes sense. I mean, I know we need to pave it, we've been talking about
Say
it
the
for 10
paving
years,
piece,
but
yeah.
why pave something that's gonna maybe change 6 months later?
Chris?
Okay.
Chris Carson, Stockbridge Road, Chairman Capital Planning. I just wanted to say the exact same thing, that we do have a process for this kind of thing. It should be brought forth before capital planning. And only to hijack the topic a little bit, I think moving forward as a citizen, I'd like to see more capital planning involvement in this type of project. As chairman, I want to work with you guys and the new TA as far as what I can do, what we can do to broaden capital planning's our
Participation.
Input, there you go, into this process. I think, in the year, my past 5 years, we've been sort of a cursory piece of the overall budget process. And looking over the town warrant or the town charter, we're supposed to be a larger piece of this. So when projects like, a big capital project like Widows Walk improvements comes up, then it should flow through us before it even gets presented to you.
Yeah, so
My-
I
my
think that's
2
valid,
cents.
maybe just with the
Yeah.
absence of a town administrator the past couple months, probably, that little check probably didn't happen, so I don't disagree with that.
I think also the project isn't well enough developed. We would have a hard time at town meeting describing what we want to do. There's no conceptuals, there are no schematics. I think it may be, and putting it off till the spring, we'll take it through a process, maybe get some more advice from members of the community who use the golf course, and have a better developed project, more coherent story. We're not really interfering with when we would do it anyway.
Okay.
Additionally, the golf course doesn't have any money to fund this, so it would have to be a borrowing project. Whereas, starting in the spring, revenues will be coming in, they'll have money effective July 1st, and could fund the project.
Karen?
Just 2 things. There has been a lot of talk about the whole macro issues facing the golf course, irrigation's coming up, and the clubhouse renovation, and then the whole, this whole project of enhancing the parking lot and the curb appeal. I would suggest that we might want to think about a committee to support that research, because it's a big, it could potentially be a big project that we might want to, and I don't know what the process is for that, but I would put it out there, something that, I know there are an awful lot of people that are very committed to this golf course that would have thoughtful input in that. And then we can look at it, as one whole big picture.
Sean, you raised that too.
Right.
Last time the warrant came up.
Right.
Oh, it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So no, it's,
Tony, did you serve on something like that? You said at different
Yeah.
times, and it.
There's been many groups that have
But
got
now,
together.
but now that the bond's paid off, what do you know?
Right.
Maybe
There's
it's.
funds that
yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I think what happened was hastily, we wanted to just get the thing
at
paved.
least paved.
And then it kind of grew. If we're going to take a little bit to pave it, then let's fix a bathroom and let's build a fence. And then it just grew into something bigger and less, like you said, coherent than maybe it should be. And I think Chris has a good, I agree, it's.
It should all be part of their 5-year capital plan. We've already talked about here, we've already started funding irrigation, and the heating and AC should be done or getting done. So a lot of these pieces have been discussed, as part of their 5-year, when we sit down with them, they've discussed, these are things we'd like to do moving forward. I don't want to say it's the first time I've heard about the parking lot, but, I can't say that for certain, but it does seem that we're supposed to have a 5-year plan in front of us. Yeah, whether there's a committee that puts that together or whatever.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
I think the board can
we can IP it on the
form an
floor,
ad hoc
right?
committee, a single task committee, which is to
And see where it goes.
work on this project. And it's not a standing committee, it could be just, you could solicit for
Could be a
interested
task
parties.
force.
We could have a task force, write a charter for it, I
Yep.
could help prepare a charter that clearly defines what the task is, then you could staff it and they could do their work in preparation for going through the proper process.
Richard's group.
Capital planning
Yeah,
and advisory, and you.
Okay. So, with regards to the warrant, then, I sort of am hearing that we're all in agreement to that. Would we just IP this on the floor since it's already published? Is that how we handle this?
I think so.
Or can we take it off?
Make any changes you want tonight.
Tonight? Okay, okay.
Can I ask one other question?
Yes.
Is there, so this is going to get tabled, the parking lot is a problem, I don't know if we can look into maybe an improvement that can be made that's a low-cost improvement. I don't know how we can do that, so that next summer it's a lot better than it is now. I don't know, that's a question for DPW, I guess. To make it a little less harsh right now while we figure out the big picture.
Well, it's reprocessed asphalt, so what you do is just put more reprocessed asphalt down, or you do it right, and you remove it, and, you know.
Right, which
so, I
we're
mean,
thinking of
so,
waiting on.
Right, so Al, I don't know, is it?
And there's Conservation Commission needs to be involved because
Right.
of potential drainage issues and that sort of thing.
Right.
But I'll ask the DPW to look at what minor improvements could they
Incremental.
have some leeway to make that would improve it in preparation for the spring.
And since GATRA stops there, we, I think, have access to other funds to help pay for it as well.
What does?
GATRA, because it's a public stop. So I think we should look into that as well.
All right, thanks.
For financing. Yep. Okay. Any other questions on 4? No?
No.
5, it's assessor's property revaluation.
Good.
It's pretty straightforward, right? 6, community preservation. We went through that this evening. Those are reconciliations.
Yeah, Nancy, can you do me one favor? The big one here is obviously the Crosby. Can you just find out why we got that? Was it just underpriced? What caused that?
I'll go back to what funds came out of that project at the
Yeah.
time.
Thanks.
Any questions on Article 7, which is the community housing for Central Park windows project? Actually, it's all the other projects. Yeah, it's everything.
I'd like to talk about number 3.
You want to talk about number 3 again?
No.
Sure.
I'm done.
No. I'm not looking at you. Okay. Any questions on Article 7? No? All right. 8, acceptance of loan for the seawall repairs. So this is just to accept a loan from the, take a loan
Energy,
actually
yeah.
from the EOEA for the dam and seawall loan. So it's to utilize that for that second piece of Oceanside Drive. Any questions on that? Any questions? Article 9, supplement prior borrowing votes to permit the application of sale of premium to pay the project costs. So this was
That's where the
Nancy's
premium
was
for
with the
loans.
premium, when we pay that. Any questions with regards to that? Okay. Article 10 is to amend the general bylaws for waterways. Is this new? Was this on there last week?
No, it's new, isn't it, Al?
Yeah, what is this
Well,
one?
the
Well,
weed-
this isn't new.
It's the
This was
wording.
reviewed by our attorney.
Oh.
Oh, it's just the reworded.
This isn't new, it's just rewording all the time. None of these are new.
After the town council's review.
Just charge $100.
Okay,
This is part of the mooring regulations, it just wasn't in our bylaws.
okay. Any questions?
Nope.
Any questions on that? All right, 11, local option acceptance, rental revolving funds.
Good?
So this is just to track any rental fees for town and school buildings, a revolving fund. Yep,
So when now we bring it up with Gates Jim,
yep,
that revenue to apply to here at Gates Jim.
go back there. Perfect.
Good.
Okay.
That's great.
Article 12, local option acceptance for the special injury leave indemnity fund for the police and fire.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I went back and reviewed 5 years' worth of take my recommendation that we would just not move forward with this article at this time. and
Okay.
We can revisit it in the spring with a new TA and see if it makes sense. Right now, I don't think it makes sense, we don't have to do it, we have a funding mechanism in place.
Okay. Is the board
I'm fine with that.
amenable to that?
Fine.
Okay. All right, thanks, Nancy. Article 13, which is the conservation land that Al referred to at the beginning of the meeting, still identifying, so keep this on in the event that we find it, or, I mean,
This gives you leave to acquire it, if you need to, and to impose conservation restrictions on the property,
okay.
on a piece of property related to this.
So it's quite possible that before this meeting, we'll decide what we want to do beforehand and won't even be relevant. But if we do.
And if you don't, then, you know, it still gives you
Right.
the opportunity to
We can IP
do it
it.
before May.
Yeah. How many, we have 2 more meetings before the 14th? Yeah. Okay. Or just one?
Today's the
Yeah,
17th.
Well, today's the 17th.
November 4th, that's it.
That's it.
Well, you have your senior center meeting,
Right, but November 4th to determine.
which.
Okay, so that's the date.
Maybe
Okay.
November 7th.
So if we don't identify and agree on something, this goes away, is that?
No, you'd leave it as here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was your question, what do we take?
If we haven't agreed on a recommended site, does this stay,
It would stay on.
Stays
so then
on.
you-
have the
Just
authority?
asking the town for permission to
Okay.
purchase or acquire a piece of land if necessary, and to put a piece of conservation restriction on it.
So the-
Okay,
the-
but it doesn't
Not
put any
site-specific.
parameters about the purchase
Correct.
price.
Right. Or where it is.
But that would have to go before town anyways, doesn't it, I think?
Well, that's I guess my question, is if
I
it
mean,
just says
that's the
to
only part
acquire,
that
it's
could eliminate.
open-ended?
Yeah.
Yeah, this basically is to designate presently owned real estate for conservation purposes, and to impose a conservation restriction on the property.
No, but it says to acquire real estate or
Does say
designate.
to, yeah.
That's just my question.
Well, that's the part that could be eliminated if we already
Yeah.
Well,
chose.
that's, yeah, and if it's not, is it appropriate to leave it open-ended?
To leave it what?
Open, without a cap or without any designation?
I see it as being a nightmare, and I don't
If
know
it's not
who's going to get up there
designated,
and speak to this article, because the first question's going to be,
How much
what
is it?
Where is it?
property?
Yeah.
Where is it? How much? And by leaving it open-ended, it's going to be a nightmare.
I mean, my understanding was that this is on here as a placeholder. If we find the land, then we be specific on town meeting floor, and if not, then we can't.
Right.
So
Well, you
if
can
we-
always,
Then remove
strike
it.
one.
Exactly.
You know, you want to keep 2 in there because you want to be able to designate, but you could always strike point
Well, you
1.
can strike the to acquire.
Right.
Yeah,
You can strike acquire real estate, or, and then leave it as is.
Right.
Then you're not.
If we don't have, if
You're not
we haven't
indicating
agreed.
a buy property.
Correct.
Well, the intertown administrator.
We have
and town
property.
council, could they get it
So
changed
we don't really need to buy property.
Wait a
14
minute.
days
Well, maybe we got 2 people talking at once.
So, shall we modify that sentence? Get acquire real estate or out of there?
I would take the word acquire real estate or, those 4 words out. Because once you put that in there, it is your article.
Got it.
I think Al's
I
point
agree,
is,
yeah.
if we were able to buy something for $100.
Right, I get it.
That we would be able to actually execute it.
But I
But
would-
if,
So
I think we're all thinking if we're not going to buy a piece of property for $500,000 to do this.
No.
$528,000.
You like that number, don't you? Okay.
Can I suggest that we leave it in there and we strike it at town meeting?
That's
In
fair.
case we find a nominal
That's
purchase
what
of
I'd like to
property.
do. I'd like to see what happens on the 4th.
Because I don't know what you said you may, I have no idea what is on the list there and what it really encompasses.
And
There's
then-
a cost of anything we do, there's a cost to put a conservation restriction on. I mean, so there is a need to have appropriate sum of money for such purposes.
Well, it says to acquire real estate.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
So we can just amend it on town meeting floor.
yeah.
I think probably to acquire real estate or out of there would be a better idea. You're not gonna need to do that.
You're gonna get.
You
you're
know
gonna-
the facts.
I only say that because if you keep it in there, it's gonna go to print. People are gonna read it. They're gonna come in not knowing anything changed, if it changes. And then you're gonna have a lot of questions. I just think.
I agree.
Unless we know, I would not. The rest of the language is fine because you're gonna need funds to pay for the conservation restrictions. You're gonna have to raise money to fix that and pay for it to get it done. That I get. But
Okay, let's strike those 4 words.
So struck.
And then the last one is Article 14, the public consumption of marijuana or THC by law, which was introduced by Chief of Police, right?
Yep.
Okay. Good. All right. So we need, to approve these tonight, Maureen?
Yes, they have been published 14 days prior to town meeting. But as I started to say, it's continued finding further changes by town council and/or the interim town administrator. So changes can be made.
So I'll move the Board of Selectmen approve the warrant for November 14th, 2017, special town meeting contingent upon any further changes by town council and/or town administrator, as well, subject to rescinding Article 4, Whittles Walk improvements, and Article 12, local option acceptance.
The 4 words.
Special injury leave indemnity fund for police and fire, and under Article 13, deletion of the words acquired real estate or.
Second.
You have that, Julian? Okay. Seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect.
Nancy,
That's not
Lorraine, and Al.
supported.
That's,
What's that?
That's just the warrant in totality, not the support of each article.
all right.
Should we take like a 5-minute break? Madam Chair?
If you'd like to.
I would like to,
Okay.
just so it's been 2.5 hours, I think, just to take a quick break would
All
be
right,
nice.
it's 9:28. We're going to take 5 minutes. Into regular session after a short break.
That's a good idea.
Next on the agenda is to talk about the lottery Keno monitor at the 7-Eleven. Lorraine, do you want to just give an update on that?
We received a letter. Oh, do you want to do it now? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Al.
That's fine.
We'll leave boss man do it.
Okay.
Give me something to do here. Okay, so we received a
over
letter
there.
from the Lottery Commission saying that the lottery is offering a Keno monitor to existing 7-Eleven stores in Scituate, namely 337 Gannett Road in North Scituate. And we're being notified of that, or you are being notified of that, to install a monitor at this location. And if you object as these agents receiving a monitor, you must do so by Friday of this week. Basically, 21 days of receipt of this letter. And it says to whom you should address your concerns. We've done a little research on this, since it's a little new. And basically, this is something the state is offering to an existing Keno operator. Apparently, the store already has Keno in it. It's just enhancing it with monitors. A neighboring town administrator I consulted with suggested that this might be an opportunity for us to invite in the operator to discuss what their business is with Keno, how they intend to have this enhance their business. What will it mean in terms of more traffic, those sorts of things. So to that extent, you have the right to intervene. However, you have to do it by
Only
Friday.
have to do it by Friday?
Right.
Yeah, really.
So it's somewhat moot, although you still have the right to invite the operator in and discuss their Keno business and how this works for them. Or perhaps we could ask the state for an extension of the time.
Sean.
And why haven't we done this to any of the other establishments that have had Keno? Because it's the monitor or something? Did you say?
Yeah, monitor.
Is that different?
Keno
I mean, they,
monitor, a TV set, I think.
yeah, but they, other places.
We have had other monitors at other
Yeah.
businesses.
I mean, the Scituate Tavern has one. And
Right, no, we have them, but they didn't come in, because I kind of wondered myself, and we don't have a say. I was told we didn't have a say, and not that I care, but I was just curious. Why are we being notified or even have a chance to critique it when, you know, and not that I care to, but maybe something
We
changed?
get the same notice from the lottery for any Keno monitor that they install.
Really?
We put it on every selectman agenda. It just doesn't happen that often, because
Oh.
they're pretty much all installed.
Oh,
there are situations where, probably not in a corporate store such as this, but smaller businesses have actually converted themselves from a coffee shop into a Keno parlor by, you know, adding more and more Keno. So it basically changes the nature of their business. Not in any way indicating that's what's happening here. It's just that you, as leaders in the community, have the right to review changes in businesses that might be more impactful on the community.
Karen, did you have something you wanted to say or ask?
No, Al's already answered that question.
Anybody else?
So it's,
Any questions?
given other circumstances, you may want to have this be part of a discussion at some point in the future. But we probably won't be doing anything about responding to the state on this one. Because you'd have to do it by Friday.
We don't know, I mean, I assume that they'll take it if they're offered it, but
I don't think we need to do anything,
no,
in my opinion.
I don't think so either.
Do you want to do anything?
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing about it, but I'm like, as far as doing anything between now and Friday, no. We could always ask them to come in as a courtesy in the future, if we have time.
So do we have to approve it? Are they asking for our approval or no?
I think it's saying if we don't want to, we can,
But we don't have to take action, just,
Correct.
all right. So is that what the inclination of the board is, just not to take any action on this?
I agree.
Right.
Okay.
Is that consistent, Lorraine, with what we've done in the past? I don't remember making a
Never,
motion to
in the
approve.
3.5 years I've been here, you've never not approved one. It was
I don't,
okay.
yeah,
Like 3 or 4.
right.
But that doesn't mean you can't.
No,
Take a
yeah.
look. I mean, the only issue with this is they said that we have to notify them by Friday, send a letter by Friday, as Al mentioned, if you have objections.
Okay.
You may have a chance to talk to him about it later.
Okay. Let's do that. So we won't take any action. Okay. Alrighty. All right, so moving on to old business. Discussion and vote for the ADA notice within the Selectmen's policy.
Motion? It's written right in here. It's basically stating that people can get disability devices if it helps them with the meetings and that we don't discriminate.
It's just adding it to it. Okay.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve the ADA notice to accompany the Town of Scituate grievance procedure operational policy number 61-17.
Second?
Second by Mr. Danahy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is discussion vote for the wind turbine analysis and results. So the last meeting, John had asked a couple of questions, and thank you very much. You put together a good summary. I know you and Jennifer have been looking at a lot of data. The residents have supplied a lot of data. Thank you. You know, I think we've heard quite a bit from all sides. So I don't know if we want to review. John had specifically asked for Al to go through a couple of different calculations. Do you want to go through them, Al?
Sure. Okay, so Mr. Danahy asked, what would be the cost to the taxpayer of shutting down the wind turbine from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. during the period of April 15th through October 15th? And then he asked a second question about what would be the cost if you did it only under certain wind conditions. So let's address first the cost of shutting down the turbine every evening from 11 to 6 during that 6-month window. So the cost of the taxpayer over this last summer would have been $162,885. Over the past 5 years, the annual cost would have been $150,000 plus or minus 25. And that depends upon the wind of the summer, the operation of the turbine, and energy prices. And I can go into intricate detail about how that number is arrived at, and I'll be glad to do that.
Well, you did that last week with multiplying the kilowatt hours and whatnot. I have a question. That $162,885 cost the taxpayers, so that exact number comes out of our revenue line that goes into the budget, correct? Is that the exact number?
That would come out of our budgets, yes.
Nancy?
The wind turbine contributes to the budget in the debt service line to offset the 3 building projects.
Okay.
$100,000. The rest of it stays in the wind turbine fund.
Okay. Thank
So-
you.
Right. So really, that amount is essentially 2/3 of the net taxpayer benefit that we receive from the turbine every year, which is around $250.
Right.
So how do we calculate that? Would you like to know that?
Yeah.
I'll let you go before I ask. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're about to answer.
Are you going to ask that question?
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I used 5 years' worth of data. The production of energy from the turbine during the 6-month period of April through September is 1.3 million kilowatt hours, plus or minus something based upon, again, wind conditions and everything else. So 1.3 million kilowatt hours are produced in that 6-month window. In the last 6 months, this summer, we had a windier summer, so actually we produced more. We produced 1.9 million kilowatt hours of electricity. The nighttime production was 30% of that. And that's based upon actually looking at turbine operation, each one of those hours, how much was produced every night in the summer from April through October, between 11 and 6 o'clock. So between 11 and 6 o'clock in the morning, there was 571,000 kilowatt hours produced during the summer. So if we had put curtailment in place for those 6 months, we would have owed Scituate Wind $68,000 based on lost production. Okay, and that $68,000 is taking the amount of electricity that they would have produced and sold to us, and multiplying it times the 9.4 cents that we pay them plus the 2.5 cents of renewable energy credits that they get. So that adds up to 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's their $68,000. In addition, over this period, we would have received from National Grid 16.2 cents per kilowatt hour, or $95,000. So here's what's happening now. When it makes electricity, we get money, 16 cents from the National Grid, and we pay Scituate Wind 9.5 cents. So we get to keep that money. When it's shut down, if we were to shut it down, and what happened this summer when we did shut it down, is that we still pay them the 9.5 cents, but we don't get the 16 cents at all. So we lose the total stream of revenue, and we're still paying for the power by contract. So the total cost, adding these two together for the summer, would have been $163,000 essentially, or about 64% of the total taxpayer benefit that we received. Now, if we did it just during the times when the wind came from the directions that Mr. Daugherty confirmed through his analysis based on our data, which is basically when it's coming from the westerly directions, whether it's northwesterly or southwesterly. During the last 6 months, the wind blew from those directions in those hours about 68% of the time. So if we were to curtail it only when it was shut down in those wind directions during those hours and during those months, the cost of the taxpayer would have been $111,000 for the summer, or about 46% of the total benefit to the town. So it's, those are the facts.
So that $250,000 benefit that we get, that's the combined benefit? The same sort of calculation, right? That's the combined.
No, that's the combined loss.
Well, the
No, when
250.
it's all running and,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So that was kind of my, so Nancy, the 250 that we put into that fund is the revenue minus the expense. So it's the net.
But did you say that but only 100,000 of that, whatever the net is, 100,000 of it is being allocated to a line item right now?
To the debt. Yeah.
To the debt. So the other 150 stays in the turbine fund? Is that what you said? Okay. So if we reduce, say, by $100,000, we still haven't, we could theoretically allocate money towards the debt but reduce the amount in capital or in the revolving fund?
You could. One of the concerns, if I may chime in, was that there'd be enough money in those funds to continue to subsidize the debt exclusions, which is one of the things that the board talked about when these projects were put forward. And there would be 100,000 from the solar array and 100,000 from the wind turbine to offset the debt exclusion, which we have done every year. It's in the vote, and it's actually on our recap as well, to reduce. So we currently offset by 300,000, 100 from meals tax, 100 from solar, and 100 from wind. The concern was if the wind turbine or the solar array weren't producing, would there be enough money left in the fund to continue that commitment?
Okay.
And the solar, the turbine contract is for 15 years.
Right.
Whereas the debt is for 25. And the solar, there are clauses to extend the turbine's contract by 2 5-year periods. However, if we don't extend the contract, then they have the right to go out and find someone who will buy their power. So the end of our contract doesn't,
It would still remain there?
Yes. Could very well.
Interesting. Huh, okay.
Say that again? So at the end of the contract, 15 years are up, they can still use that turbine on our property and do something else with the power?
Yes. If we choose not to.
Indefinitely?
10 years, 5 years.
Yeah, 10 years, I think.
But did you say something that we could, because I had asked that same question earlier, and what did you say, and I was a little unclear, that something to do with the lease or something we could increase, we could,
I could look into it, but it may be at the end of 15 years, if we didn't want to renew it, we could increase lease payments. We'd have to negotiate lease payments. You know, we could negotiate, I'm presuming we could negotiate a different lease payment than what we have, which is nominal.
Not now, but after 15 years, you're saying.
And we're 5 years in?
5 in.
I think this is our 6th year.
Did you have a
It's
question,
just like a
Karen?
cell tower. Once, you know, when you put a cell tower up, everybody's happy with the revenue, and then 5 years later, you begin to say, well, if we didn't have it, we could do this.
Nancy, I don't know if you projected this far out. So if the income of this is projected to offset, but the debt's the school, or the capital debt, and it's 20-year bond on that, and this is 15, did you project those incomes would go away? Or those offsets would go away? Or did you not go up?
We did not project in our numbers that they would go away.
Okay.
Because at the time, we assumed that there was enough of a balance there and we'll continue to build that
So
balance.
from that balance. So if we do reduce the capacity of the wind turbine, that'll eat into
Yeah, I
those
haven't done any of those
projected.
calculations.
Okay.
How, and the solar brings what annually now? Solar,
It has, what's its life?
no,
About
so we,
300.
100K, so 300 annually, solar, where's the other 200 go, Nancy, from the solar array?
The solar doesn't bring in as much money as the wind turbine does. It's a little bit less, and it's been
Okay.
a little, it came on later, so I think we're only in our
Thought it brought in
year,
more.
third full fiscal year. I don't have the exact number in front of me, I'm
That's
sorry,
fine, I
but
should've-
I thought it brought in more.
I think it actually produces more, but
It's
the
only
payments from
beginning of
National
it.
Grid are more spotty.
Okay, that could be why.
That's what it is. It comes, you have to beg them for the money each time.
Well, I know this is a tough discussion, and it's a tough discussion because town meeting approved the purchase of the windmill, and, you know, we've made a lot of financial commitments based on the generating of the revenue of it, so it's not easy because we're trying to balance the needs of the town and also the health and welfare of the residents up there as well. You know, and I personally think there's not a large cost that you can put on someone's health and welfare, and I know we've made some adjustments over the past year, and I don't think those adjustments are enough. I think based on the data that we've collected all summer. So I personally am willing to entertain and would support the solution, which was the second question, which was to extend it not just from the southwest, but to the southwest and northwest. So basically, essentially the west. You know, it is estimated to be $111,000 hit. And honestly, I don't know where we're going to get that revenue to make up for that. And it is a commitment. So it's not an easy position for me, because I know we have to take care of a lot of different things in this town. But that's an option that I could support. I think it's a compromise, if you will, with regards to the benefit that the turbine gives us. I don't know if anybody else has a comment.
Well, my thought was, it was based on the time of the year. What about the idea of having another test done by a different company, independent company, agreeable to everyone? It's October. If it was March, it would be a different, I'd probably think differently. But here we are in October.
What kind of test? Maybe from a third party?
Yes.
With regards to,
Wind, speed, direction, and noise, decibel levels.
Go ahead.
I think, given that the financial impact of reducing it for 6 months during the summertime whether it's the full operations or just the westerly, that we can still service the debt that money is right now, we'll still have enough to meet the line items that we have set aside for that. What we have to be concerned about is the going forward, not replenishing the money that you're gonna, if I'm saying this right, what we'll need down the road. I would think that given, the extensive data that we have on this, and that we still may want to revisit some of the testing methods, that it would be appropriate to do that now, because we won't compromise the budget, and we can have time to look at, are we looking at the right testing? Is this the right answer? But that it will give at least the residents will know for sure that next summer they're not going to have this compromised and or this problem. And it gives us time to really look at the financial impact long-term without it impacting it in the next year. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I would definitely support that we curtail the use from 11 to 6 in the summertime.
Sure, I've already pissed off the conservationists. Keep going. So I'm not opposed to that at all. I don't think, I think we have to go back and remember that we're a green community, that this is a good project. We looked into it for a long period of time, and, and it does what it's supposed to do. The town voted on it. They wanted to support it, and they put it there, and so be it. The noise is, it's difficult. It's a very difficult situation. I spoke to Mr. Daugherty a number of times over the last couple of weeks. I've gone up there a number of times and tried to hear it, and I hear something to me that is minimal. I can't hear it above the crickets at times. I go at other times, and I don't know if the weather's right all the time, but it's hard to hear sometimes. And we know a ton of people that live up in that area that aren't impacted at all, but there are clearly families that are impacted by it. If we do this testing and we find that it's still below some sort of level, what do you do? Do you then say, okay, we're not going to shut the thing off? And because I don't know. I just think it's a very difficult situation. I'm all for trying to find that right period of time so that it doesn't impact, even if it's just 30 people. I don't know how many it is. It's tough to tell from the data. Households that are impacted. If we can shut off for a finite period of time that it gives relief, I support that. But then, again, what if Sean does the testing, or as Sean suggested, the testing comes back and it's below whatever minimum the state says, then what do you do?
Well, we'll also have more data from Board of Health if we have shut it off, so we can see if it is impacting complaints and that, and we'll have more data.
Well, if you shut it off, there's not going to be any complaints. I doubt, So it's really a conundrum where I don't know. I mean, we can do a short-term fix, which is what we tried to do the last time, and our intentions were right. We picked the direction that we thought would have the impact on those citizens, and we shut it off. And we found out that our aim was off a little bit, right? And now we have to go more to the east or what have you. Yeah, or the west. So I'm not opposed to what you guys are saying, but I think we're just kind of, we're going to have to deal with this for a while to figure out what we're going to do with this turbine. And from the information I just heard today, which was new to me, it doesn't sound like it's going away, for longer than the 15 years, if what Al's saying is accurate. So I'm just trying to think of the the long-term thing. I mean, we're not going to shut it off completely, because we're going to have to lay off firefighters, policemen, teachers, town administrator. It could have a huge financial impact on the town, and that's not what we built it for. So, again, I'm just being very candid, as I have been with Mr. Daugherty all the time, and trying to go up to his house to hear what it is. And I'm sure it's there. I live on a street, and sometimes there's traffic, and I hear it, and most of the time I don't. But like I said to somebody, if my faucet's dripping, I hear that, and that keeps me up. So, I don't think there's an easy solution here, but I'm all into tweaking it and trying to investigate and find out what to do.
When was the last time the DEP did the test for the decibels?
The testing was done right after, well, within a year after construction.
Okay, so it's been a while.
And the purpose of testing would only be if, and it was well below.
Right.
So, I mean, the purpose of testing would be if we think it's not in compliance, then they have an issue. If it's in compliance, then we have the issue, okay? And frankly, it wasn't close.
It was pretty low back then. Okay.
And it, you know, whether or not the state regulation is right or wrong, we can't determine the state regulation. It is a state regulation, and it's on that basis of that regulation that they built this thing, and we entered into a contract with them. So it's neither here nor there whether the state regulation is going to be improved someday in the future.
Yep.
But it's what it is. So, you know, hearing something doesn't mean that it's out of regulation. So
Yeah, right.
I
That's what I wanted
we
to
could
point
test, but I
out.
think we're just sort of, it's expensive to test, and it didn't before seem to be anywhere near out of regulation. No one said to me, boy, it's louder now than it was 5 years ago, but that's just an opinion on testing versus not
I just had a few questions on the numbers. So the cost, the loss is $163,000. What's the estimated revenue then from it? Is it 250?
The estimated revenue from it, for that period would be, I mean, I can tell you exactly what the revenue is, but I don't.
The reason why I'm asking is this, because the
it's
time
lower
period,
than that.
the time period that we're looking to turn it off is basically 1/4 of the time that, for the year, or for a year. So half the year it's running, and then the time period we're turning off is from not even a full 12 hours. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, half of it's revenue, half is expense. Because you're only losing your revenue piece, but you're gaining an expense to pay them because they didn't make money. So
So it's like a penalty.
yeah, so of the 90,
So
the $68,000 is new.
68 is what,
So this
that's the payment.
$68,000 is what we have
But
to
then-
pay them because they didn't make it.
and then 94 lost in rebates.
That's our revenue.
yeah,
All right, so of the 250, it's 94 that we lose, but then we pay 67.
Right.
All right.
But I think Al brought up a good
So, I mean,
point. If
so
they're
our-
not,
if I
if
could
they're not
just-
compliant, then it's a whole nother game.
right.
And that's what that's what you do the testing for, to see if they're compliant. And I think we could probably even get them to pay for a portion of it, right? I mean, don't they have to do regular testing to make sure that they're compliant?
Would they have to test for it, you see?
Yeah, can't we make them test if we thought that they weren't compliant?
I don't know why would we do that if, we could ask them.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's no contractual thing about it.
Yeah.
We'd have to prove that we think that they're not in compliant, and they'd have to prove that they are.
Right.
So let me ask another question. You said 100,000, and I forgot, it's 100 that's been earmarked for the debt for both is it for just the school, or is it for the school and the public safety? It's all three.
All three projects.
So that leaves a deficit of 12,000 ultimately.
That's,
And in order to do the testing, you're going to have it operating during those time periods that you're trying to monitor. That's the other issue. So, I mean, you can do the
Test
testing.
it during the summer?
Yeah, during the summer, I would assume. I mean, you can do the testing, but how are you going to test
Why
it
would
if
you
it's
have to
shut
do that?
down?
Yeah, because that's when the winds are the strongest.
No,
So,
that's
I
when
mean,
the
you can't
winds
do a
come from
testing.
that direction.
You can't shut it down and then expect to do
Yeah, but the
testing because
decibel
of
level's
this.
going to be the same regardless of whether it's.
There's not going to be a decibel
Not
because the
gonna
wind.
spin.
It's not going to
No,
spin.
I know, you're not, let me finish my comment. Like whether you test the decibel level, whether it's coming from the east, the south, the north.
Because it's going across the marsh, or
But
it's going
where
across.
it's going, where it's projecting.
When it was
It's still
tested,
the
it was
distance.
tested on the basis of, the neighbors were saying, here's when it's allowed us, under these conditions, and that, under those conditions was when they went out and tested it. That's why it took so long to test it, because they had to catch those conditions, so.
Okay, I understand. Yes, Sean, go ahead, sorry.
No, it might be stupid, but, you know, it's making noise for some people. maybe some people it's not bothering them. MBTA came back into town, and they were gonna disrupt a lot of residents, so they provided mitigation. Is that out of the question? You know, Mr. Dottie's windows might be an old style or something like that. Maybe they're 25, and I'm just throwing him out. There could be any one of the folks out here, you know? And maybe the person that built on Moreland Road, one of the new houses, they have, you know, triple pane or something like that. I'm just, you know, that, you know.
I was thinking of planting trees or coming up with some other buffer.
Okay, yeah, all that could be good, you know? I mean, we all want it, but we all want our residents to have a good night's sleep. They don't want to be disrupted. So,
I think those are the things we can explore while I think we should address the issue up front, which is, this is a problem, it's clearly a problem. It won't be a financial problem for a little while, and that gives us, I think we should address the real concern and limit its use. And while that's going on, maybe testing isn't appropriate, we find out that's not good, but we look at mitigation things that would end up being less costly to the town. And I don't think we should delay relief to the residents that are affected by this while we do that research.
Well, we're past the period.
Right, so now.
Well, I know, it's moot until,
It's
we'll
6
just
months
work really
away.
fast till next summer.
Maybe we get a committee together that comes up with some mitigation ideas. I mean,
I didn't think of plantings, but, you know, I think some of the area you're talking about might be wetlands, and even if you could plant in the wetlands, I don't know if stuff would, you know, grow and take and not get blown over, but it's, I was just thinking more construction.
right, that was a good idea.
Mrs. Carlborough?
Thank you, Phyllis Carlborough, Choice 60 Road. Can I ask you, Madam Chairman?
Sure.
When the testing was done for these sound waves and all this kind of stuff, I believe I remember them, they were big boxes at Widow's Walk along the fairways and that, which I think were probably the, the speaker or whatever it was, bringing the sound in and measuring the sound. However, you know, the windmills up here, the speakers are down low. I mean, to me, that would not be the proper way to, you know, try to adjust what is coming at you at a higher, you know, and I don't know how they test this. I don't know whether, he would know whether there's, you know, how the testing was done, but I mean, I think you really have to take a look at how the testing is done in order to get an accurate sense of what the sound wave is coming in that particular.
Al, can you speak to that? Because I wasn't up here when the testing was
Right,
done.
the town, the Board of Health hired actually went to the DEP and said who are the qualified firms, acoustical engineering firms to do this. And they gave them 3 or 4 names. The Board of Health hired one of those, the town did, hired one of those firms. They, Scituate Wind paid for the firm, paid the town back for this, but the town hired the firm, and then the firm filed their protocol for testing and then went to the DEP. The DEP said yes, that's qualified testing. That would match up with our regulations. And then the testing was done on the ground up on Third Cliff. I'm not sure what done at Widow's Walk had nothing to do with the turbine testing. The turbine testing was done up in the neighborhood that seemed to have an issue. It was done at night. It was done at night the nights when there was low wind at ground level, so you didn't get rustling of leaves, but there was wind at the turbine sufficient for the turbine to be creating the conditions that was thought to be an issue. So, I mean, the protocol was blessed by the state. We're not experts at it, so
Right.
we had to rely upon hired guns.
Okay. Mr. Doherty?
Take Mr. Walton.
Keith Waller, 200 Country Way. I've been watching this for 12 weeks and I haven't said anything. I've been studying it for 12 weeks. I haven't said anything. I've got all the data from the town. I've sent it off to some professionals to have it all analyzed. And there were some flaws in the for testing, which we can talk about, I'm not gonna talk about tonight, but there were flaws. And testing needs to be done by an impartial group. And yes, the Board of Health chose the person, but if I recall, there was a committee, right? 3 different groups of 2 that were on the committee, is that right? 2 from the Board of Health, 2 from the wind turbine people, and 2 from local people, correct? So, and again, we can go back and look at this, but one of the people from the Board of Health was a lawyer, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head. And
Lynch.
Okay, Lynch. He actually, his firm worked for the turbine people. And John, I'm not trying to say there's collusion or anything, but I think he should have recused himself personally. He shouldn't have been making that vote. That's not my call to make, but it's just another thing that kind of muddies the waters to me, looking at it. And I have nothing in this to gain. I'm just here trying to help these people try to sleep at night. And there are issues. It's not as straightforward as Al's trying to say it is. There's issues out there, and I'd be more than happy to put something together for you and let you know what I've found in the last 12 weeks.
Thank
Sure,
you.
send it over.
So, yeah, thank you. I'd be interested to see what third party and officials looked at it, just to have an idea of what, you know, who else is looking at it. Be helpful. Mr. Doherty, did you have your hand up?
You were talking about the DEP testing protocols. It's interesting to note that they have really defined parameters on how you're supposed to test. One of them is that you have to be at least 25 feet from any buildings. Now, those aren't the conditions. I don't go outside, I don't sleep outside. They also take it down to ground level. They have their testing meter tripod, about 4 feet, 5 feet off the ground. I sleep 50 feet above the ground or the second floor of the house, maybe 30 feet above the ground in my house. Now, whether that impacts how the meter records something and whether my house acts like a giant collector, like an ear, and channels it into me, it's different. And I'm sure everybody else who has these complaints don't sleep outside. They sleep in their house, and they usually have the windows open. Mr. Harris said something about getting the right windows. Well, he's assuming that we all want to sleep with our windows closed on a beautiful summer's night. Not some people do, but I don't. That's why I have windows. They're Anderson windows, by the way. The thermal thing.
I'm just trying to come up with
Well,
ideas.
I know, but I'm just trying to say. And then another condition. These nights that the things were tested, nobody has seen any concurring complaints from any residents that they couldn't sleep that night. It would be interesting to have a test performed some night when complaints came in, but that's never happened. Obviously, over 2 years, if there's only 122 complaints over 2 years, I mean, that's 770 some odd days. You know, not every night that everybody complains, under certain conditions. So it's difficult to tell somebody to go out there and test with all of the different parameters and different complexities of where and what time of the night, what location. I won't get into the other aspects of the DEP. A study done, and they determined that their tests don't take that amplitude modulation, that whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. They only registered the solid sound before the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. You know, so Mr. Baggett might be very well true that they may do it again and they get compliance because it doesn't. Their tests don't take into account that impulsive noise. If it really, and again, it may show non-compliance, but it may not. In any case, whether it does or it doesn't, these complaints are real from myself and my neighbors. And you could go out there and tell me and do tests around the clock and tell me that they're in compliance. It still wakes me up and it wakes my neighbors up. Now, all that's going to do is get you off the hook financially, which is fine with me because that's good, but I don't care too much about money at this point. I just want to sleep. showing non-compliance voids the contract with Scituate Wind. I know that's what you're looking for. But don't expect those tests to find problems, because we got them regardless of whether it's in compliance or out of compliance by the DEP tests.
I understand.
I think that's what we're saying. I mean, that's what I just said. So here's it's not going away, right? So we got to figure out what we can do to make it more comfortable for you people that are being impacted on it. I know your neighbors that don't hear a thing.
I know them too.
I know. So it's very, you know, we're trying to be sensitive to your needs and what we need to do, but it's not going to be tearing that thing down. So we got to start thinking out of the box, as Sean, I think, was alluding to figure out how else can we make this work and be more comfortable. We don't mind shutting it off for a period of time, because it's not really it's not a money play that we're trying to do, although the money could easily be used in this town in 1,000 different projects. But that's not our biggest concern right now. It's how can we help you guys without going into financial despair, you know, for the project. So I think we've got to start thinking longer terms. Like you said, we can do the test, but the only good solution that you guys are going to get out of it is they're not compliant, and then you think that we're going to go and get out of our lease with them. I mean, that's the only solution that you guys want to come from that. So I think we've got to get brighter minds together to kind of figure out what we can do to eliminate some of the, you know, some of the sounds that you're hearing. And I don't know the solution.
I got a question. Nancy, okay, so going back to the numbers. 100,000 is earmarked from it. What's the remaining portion, the remaining 150? How have we been earmarking that in the past 2-3 years?
It has helped with streetlight expenses, the electricity costs,
Mhm.
and those have gone over. And in fiscal 18 budget, it was 100,000 from each of those two revolving funds used for the utility costs for the new buildings, but that was a one-time allocation. We didn't expect it to happen again. Otherwise, the money would stay in the fund for the offset of the debt exclusions.
So right now, they're not earmarked, other than the 100,000. Okay. So one of the thoughts I have is this. Clearly, 100,000 has got to be earmarked for servicing of the debt. That has to happen. The remaining, based on the number of the 110, would leave basically an excess of around 40,000, 39,000. I'd be curious to know if we actually hired a company to set up, and I'm not sure how they do it. It's not like underground subsurface monitoring wells, but they do have like little like aerials that they do detect, you know, the noise and find out what the contract would be for setting up at various points between Third Cliff, you know, Kent Street and Driftway, Old Driftway, you know, just monitoring sounds. And I think it's going to be more than that, but I'd be curious to know, you know, and have them basically find out what the cost is going to be for a year round to come out and do it and set it up. My thought is, if that's the case, then the excess could be used for it. But to do that, it has to be on.
But what does it matter? Even if we go back to these people and say it detects no noise, they're still awake, and they don't care what the results are unless it shuts the thing off. So, you know, we can test and find out whether we're compliant or not, but it doesn't matter. We're going to come back and say, yes, we're way under the guidelines, as Al said, but he's still going to come in here every week and say, I can't sleep because it's whoosh, you know, because I hear this noise.
Right.
You know, I think the problem is beyond that. You know, I'd rather take that $40,000 and invest it into something else that put a turbine going in the other direction and blow the sound the other way. I don't know, you know.
The only problem with mitigation is that then you're going to get into, I mean, the remedy is legally, if there's a nuisance factor, every homeowner has a legal right to take that issue against the turbine company. And the mitigation could be windows, and that could be very expensive proposition if you take each one. So for the town to get into that is going to be a very costly proposition. So, you know, $150,000 is going to go pretty quickly within 2 houses, and then before long it could be other things. So I don't see that as being the panacea at this point. I think the issue is either we take a determination and say shut it off between the time period of X and Y and when the wind is going in a certain direction, and then we go from there. Or to Jean's point, that if there is a suggestion of a flaw in the testing that was done, then to retest it one more time before you actually end up making it. But to your point, you're absolutely right. There are many people who are susceptible or more sensitive, if you will, to noise than most people. And that could be the issue here. And if you do live next to a wind turbine, or something that is noisy, regardless of a turbine, it could be any type of industry, you're going to be sensitive to it. And it could be under the legal limit of whatever that regulation states for that operation. But nonetheless, it's annoying and it's a pain. So I don't know the answer to that, but I just think that, and I will say, there is one family that frankly has every legal right and purpose to say, shut it off completely. I get that. Unfortunately, that is not a remedy here. But as I say to you, I think my feeling is, if you want to do that, then do more testing. Otherwise, then, to your point, then I think a decision we could make, or make a decision on one way or the other.
I was just going to say, and David touched on it, I wonder in 6 years if the methods of testing have changed. Okay, so to David's point, yeah, maybe they tested this way 6 years ago, but things have happened. A lot of, no? Well, I think you're almost an expert.
The only thing if we tested, the only thing testing would do is say that it's not our problem. It doesn't solve anybody's problem.
All right,
but it may give us some recourse.
It may, and if we want to take that path, we can take that.
Right.
Hire a testing firm and do it, but I'm just afraid that the can just goes down the road.
Right.
Done, it still comes back as, I'm just trying to be, as you are, proactive about it. It's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna come back with a solution. There were 18 incident days this summer when complaints occurred, and the draconian question that was asked was, what if we shut it off completely in the evenings from mid-April to mid-October, which is more than we did this summer. And if the wind was in any way coming from the west, okay? So that results in a chunk of change, $162,000 this summer. It's a little more some years, maybe less other years. But you could begin saying, okay, well, what if we look at widening the range at where we shut it down, not completely, but rather, a different window. Maybe this would have eliminated 100% of the complaints this summer, but maybe there's a compromise in there also, between, we do it under the most, I'm saying go 50-50, find a place, find a sweet spot where it's a little more acceptable or whatever.
Karen, did you have a comment?
I'm winging it here.
So a little bit on the contract question, just one more question. So we do testing, we find out, and it's a nuisance and it's shut down, then all that income goes away, right? I mean, even if it's not our fault,
what they would do is they would
if
it's not in compliance, they would try to fix it, and then they'd be back up in operation. They have a multi-million-dollar investment.
Correct.
And
okay.
Can they fix it to make it less noisy? It seems to me that it's not, I mean, I hear it when it turns, and it grinds for whatever, 10 seconds while it changes its angle, but that whooshing noise, that's just the nature of the device.
Right.
That's never gonna go away.
Right.
But that's more a question, I don't know.
I mean, it's what it's doing is it's taking air and converting it into, it's slowing the air down, and then what you're hearing is
the impact against the blade, yeah.
Mr. Darty?
Yeah, you talked about this testing, and Mr. Harris had a point, he said, what if the new testing techniques show something different. Well, Mr. Bangert is well aware of the fact that the DEP is aware that the current testing does not take into account the unique noise from wind turbines. He sat on the wind tag committee. He listened to acousticians. He listened to the three of them on there, and they discussed this. At the end of this 3-month, 4-month committee he sat on, the DEP came up with 2 conclusions. The current testing does not take in amplitude modulation, impulse, whoosh, whoosh. And they said, 2 things we can do. We can give a 5 dBA credit on top of what we detect now, or we can go to fast metering on our meters so it would detect that peak. But the DEP and Mr. Vango tell them, Al, wasn't that true? It's a chart.
Mr. Darty, you're getting in the weeds on something that.
No, but
hang
they're
on one
talking
second.
about the testing.
Can I?
1 minute.
I'm sorry if I offended you by saying that, but the issue is not whether the test is right or wrong. The issue is what the law is right now. And
I was addressing Mr. Harris's question.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So,
the test may not take into account, the test was designed for noise of factories and everything else. It doesn't take into account necessarily all the factors related to wind turbines.
so it sounds like to me
And
that.
until they change it,
Right.
there's,
So it sounds like to me that the board is inclined to see if any testing has changed, see if there's an independent tester that, find out how much it costs to hire one, to make sure that it is in compliance. And then we can talk about is that something that the board would like to see done as one part here, or maybe a 2-part solution?
I don't care, but I don't think that's not the solution. You know, like Al said, if it's a little bit out of compliance, they're gonna do something to get it in compliance. And if it's.
Well, then people might sleep better.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You know, I'm just saying, if all of a sudden there's something, it's mechanical, if something wears and it's gonna make noise, you know? And maybe it didn't in the beginning. I don't know.
I have no problem with it.
John?
No problem with what?
Okay, with testing.
Testing? All right.
I think we need to learn what the options are, for sure, of what it accomplishes. I don't know if I think to your point, if we test, that's fine, but what's the end game there? And I don't
think we're gonna know until we see if it reveals anything different.
I think we need to
Right.
start thinking out of the
Well,
box in terms of,
Can we do that testing? Is it meaningful to do additional testing before next summer? Or does it have to be under the same conditions?
could be done now.
So one of the thoughts I had is to suggest, if we end up doing testing, like I said, it's gonna have to be turned on. So, in the meantime, you could say, keep it off, right now, from now until April, it's irrelevant because it's gonna be on. That's great data. And then in the summer, shut it off unless they're testing it. I mean, I'm not sure what the monitoring, I just don't know how they go about testing the sounds, the acoustic sounds. Like I said, if it was a monitoring well, it's in the ground, they test it daily to figure out composition of what the flow is. But I'm like, here, I assume they're gonna put something out, a receiver, that's gonna obtain that information. So to do that, it's still gotta go. That's a problem.
I mean, these numbers were just the April to October shutdown cost.
Right.
So, I could calculate the.
You don't need to shut the remaining year off.
No.
That's gonna be operating. It's just again, that time
We could test during the
period.
remainder of the year. If you so choose to test, it just has to be running is all.
Right.
Conditions aren't, if it's a mechanical wear, it's not gonna be different now than it was in the summer.
I mean, we may not get prevailing winds from the south, or from wherever, the problem is, but on occasion, we do, So if we could test. I know the temperatures obviously are different, but the noise should be the noise.
Riley?
My name is Jerry Kelly, 56 Moorland Road. I am not upwind from the industrial wind turbine but I am essentially in a butter. I am age appropriately hearing challenged. I hear it regularly when the wind is blowing in our direction. I support the testing, but please, I implore you to look to towns that have done the right thing with their wind turbine, like Falmouth, and find a testing source that truly is impartial and is not wind industry friendly. Otherwise, you can cook the books. You know, figures lie and liars figure, and you can design a test to output what you want. Mitigation is a great idea, but I echo what David Doherty said. People sleep with their windows open. They spend all the money to replace windows isn't going to remove the problem. These things are over 200 feet in the air. Unless we're planting redwoods, you're not going to be able to do mitigation from that. It's a noble quest, but I don't think you're going to get there through mitigation. The last thing is, the manufacturer of the industrial wind turbine is a bankrupt People's Republic of China company. They were delisted shortly after we bought it. They're not doing any work on noise attenuation, noise mitigation, and the mechanics of this, the acoustic engineering, you're not going to be able to change, and there's not a manufacturer to work with you.
So then why would we test it?
Because you'll test it to find out whether in fact it is producing the noise that's keeping people up at night so that you can do the partial shutdown at night during the summer.
So what if it says no? So it comes back, it's well below standards, and so we say, flip it on, just let it run.
That's what we're living with now.
Well, no, we've shut it off now. We shut it off for a good, if these conditions are met. So
I think that if you hire an independent testing firm.
I keep hearing this collusion stuff, and it really that's what we're saying. We'll hire, we don't care who we hire to do this.
He's not saying we are,
No.
he's saying the mayor.
I know, but
I'm not
whoever-
accusing you of
No, but there's
anything.
just.
But Scituate Wind doesn't have the same interest as we have as residents or as the town.
Well, we have, as supporting your residents, we didn't, I don't know what happened with this thing, but the suggestion that there's this going on is just put it behind us and let's hire an independent person to look at it. That's what we've been saying since day
Let's make sure it's
one.
truly independent.
We will.
Okay, yeah.
Noted. Noted. All right. Mr. Wallow?
I just have to get this on the record. I agree with John.
Okay.
That family you're talking about?
Wait a minute. Say that again and get him on TV, okay?
That family you're talking about, again, I didn't want to go into more details, but they have kids that can't come home from school in the afternoon because of the flickering thing. So they stay at school to do their homework.
Yeah.
Every day. I mean, we don't have to deal with that stuff. So that one family you're talking about, yeah, they could shut everything down real quick if they wanted to, I think.
Well, we can't. But, okay. All right, so we're going to do the independent testing. Do we want to make a motion to, if the motions right here are to shut them down between April 15th and October 15th, it doesn't make any sense in my mind to, we're beyond those dates right now. So, I don't mean motion, but options of cost that we've looked at. I chose the wrong word. Or we can still entertain one of these options and it's in place and we get the testing in the meantime.
What about a different modification? Can we move to hire an independent consultant to monitor the situation between now and next April, because if that testing can be done, and then at the same time say, should that be inconclusive, or if it's inconclusive or below levels, to agree to shut it down in the summer, because we know the problem is real. you know?
In other words, to have the testing between now and April, so that then we'd have an idea of what the data states, and then from there,
Make a decision at
be
that point.
prepared for the summer. The only downside on that is that you will get some complaints, but because it's the winter, windows will be closed, you probably, the baseline for, I know if I were living there, I'd want the windows open and be able to hear it, and then I'd be able to complain.
No, but
about
the
the
testing
complaints,
is
we
to
just
see
wanna
if
get the
there's-
noise.
If we can find an independent test, if there's something, if the testing was wrong, or there's a mechanical issue or something, and Al's saying that we can monitor for those things during the winter when it's running.
Yep.
Do that, but as a good faith to the residents who have been living this, say, if it's inconclusive or if it's below, that we're gonna agree to shut it down for one of these periods that were presented tonight.
Well, I'm not ready to commit to that, but I'm certainly, come April, willing to discuss that further, so in preparation for the summer. I mean, between now and then, between now and April 15th,
We'll know
it's
more.
moot, but I know,
Right.
I'd hope to know more between now and then.
We currently have most of that in place right now anyways. All we're gonna do is expand the
Right.
target zone.
Right. And I'm not saying, no, I'm not inclined to do that right now.
So should we move to fund? I don't know how we can do that. Can we do that?
Well, we'll have to find
No.
out
Okay.
how much it's
Instruct
gonna
Al
cost,
to-
but
yeah.
instruct Al to.
And would it be us, or would it be Board of Health? Is this in our,
Pardon?
is it the Board of Selectmen or Board of Health?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can elect to do it.
Okay.
The Board of Health they've moved on to other things.
Okay.
So it's, their conclusion was it's
All right.
not in their purview,
So-
it's a health issue.
Does somebody want to make that motion to,
I don't know if we need,
no,
would-
well, we're
Is this
having
a-
a new one,
right.
if that's what the board,
Can we do that?
So
What's on the
wishes.
agenda?
yeah, it's to discuss and vote.
Vote,
This
okay.
doesn't
Yeah.
outline on what we're voting
Yeah.
on, it's to discuss the analysis and vote, and so if our consensus is to
I'll-
hire an
I'll try it.
independent.
I'll make a motion to hire an independent consultant to review the noise that's generated from the wind turbine.
Do I have, there's a motion on the floor, do I have a second?
Second, I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Danahy. Any further discussion?
during that wind direction, Tony, or?
I just kept it vague. so
All right,
we
okay,
can-
that's fine, yeah, nope, that's
So
good.
they
All right, good.
Test all,
Nope,
okay.
good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. So we'll
Thank
do
you.
it the independent.
I gotta switch out these discs.
Okay, we'll wait a minute. Okay, thank you.
Or we'll wrap it up.
All right, so that's that. We can actually probably go on to, want me to wait? Should we wait? How long will it take you to bring it back up?
5 minutes.
Oh, I'm gonna keep going. We have a couple of
Housekeeping.
housekeeping
We'll
things
talk
that
about
I'm
that.
just gonna keep going with, okay? All right, so we have a discussion and vote for the addition of a Selectman Library Trustee Liaison position.
I move the Board of Selectmen add a library trustee liaison position to the committee list.
Hey,
Second,
John.
Do I have a second for the liaison position?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye. I move to appoint Selectman Karen Canfield as the library trustee liaison.
Second.
Second by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
opposed? Aye.
Might say no.
Just
Did you oppose?
wanted to see if Karen was paying attention.
4 with 1
I was
abstention,
gonna
right? You
oppose.
can't vote for yourself.
Oh, and one abstention.
All right, so we have drain layers license renewal.
Sure, I move
Here,
the Board of
take a look at.
Selectmen approve a renewal of a drain layers license to Cobra Enterprise, Inc.
Second.
Yep.
Second by Ms. Canfield.
Awesome job.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One-day liquor licenses, discussion and vote. Silent Chef at the Scituate Maritime Center on 10/28.
Hang on, I'm getting it right now. I move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license at the Scituate Maritime Center located at 111 Edward Foster Road for the following: The Silent Chef on Saturday, October 28th, 2017, from 7 p.m. till 11 p.m.
Second.
Second by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
I don't see any correspondence. How about executive minutes?
We
Is
have
that?
meeting minutes.
I move the Board of Selectmen accept the meeting minutes for the Board of Selectmen meeting held on October 3rd and October 11th, 2017.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye. I further move to accept and not release executive session meeting minutes for October 3rd and October 11th, 2017, since the matters discussed are still pending at this time.
Second.
Second by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Why don't you get the motion to go into executive session on the TV?
One of them I wasn't there, the 11th, October
I will see.
11th.
Are you
I
back
was
on,
not.
sir?
That's 4-1 on the 11th?
I thought you wanted me to keep
Okay.
2 minutes left.
Okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So, we are going to move into executive session for the purpose of non-union personnel contract negotiations. One moment, I'm looking for the...
Town administrator position.
You have it here? Okay, sorry, I couldn't find it. So we will move into executive session to conduct contract negotiations for non-union personnel, which is the town administrator position. The board will reconvene in open session just to sign documents. Do I have a motion?
Move the Board of Selectmen move into executive session to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, the town administrator's position. The board will reconvene in open session.
Thank you. Ms. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Vignani?
Yes.
Mr. Dennehy?
Yes.
Ms. Canfield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.